Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto learns by himself part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Naruto Uzumaki pulled at his blonde locks in frustration, swallowing forcefully the tears that threatened to spill. He had failed the graduation examination of the academy. Of course, he would fail. It hadn't taken long for him to establish himself as the dead last of his class, spending more time clowning around than working hard, boasting about skills he didn't possess to whoever had time to lose to mock him. Obviously, he had taken a stupid bet and had attempted to pass the graduation examination despite being not at all ready and being well conscious that he wasn't. However, it was a matter of honor, and Naruto Uzumaki was not one to not put his feet where his mouth was, even if his mouth had a tendency to run faster than his feet. In a word rather than 100, he was an idiot. He knew it, somewhere deep inside, but it was stronger than him. His blood felt like it was always right below boiling point, and it was easier than peasier to get him going. The 8-year-old sighed. He wasn't mad really, more like annoyed with himself, especially considering that someone would get him running again soon and he would be too hot-headed to even recognize it for what it would be. The boy sighed again. What to do, what to do? Absent-mindedly, he flung his legs back and forth and started swinging. The old chains that kept the swing aloft started to protest vigorously at the sudden action. They were too ancient for an excitable youth like Naruto to play with them. Gaining speed and height, the young schoolboy thought hard, the wind whipping his scrunched-up face. It was a feat no one would have thought the blonde boy capable of, and, had anyone said to his face, Naruto would have noisily exclaimed his indignation. He was a clown for sure, and he was dead last when it came to sitting on a bench for hours and learning boring things, but he wasn't stupid. He was daring and hot-blooded, like any self-respecting boy of his age. That had nothing to do with being stupid, nah. And so Naruto reflected on the possible reasons for his failure. It was hard because honestly, look at him, wasn't he awesome? The blonde rose higher and higher on his swing and his visage slowly relaxed. No one could go as high as him on this swing. That was proof enough of his awesomeness, right? Yes, it was obvious to him, so how come it wasn't to his teachers? They were the ones who were stupid. His train of thought severely derailed. The blonde kept on swinging. He had no doubt he would become a splendid ninja, no matter what anyone thought of his chance. He would become so powerful, people could not keep treating like he did not exist. A grin split the blonde face as a brilliant idea came to him. He would become so strong that he would become the next Hokage. Laughter tumbled out of his mouth as the idea wormed its way through his brain and nestled comfortably in the center of it. He would become the Hokage, and then the people who constantly gave him the stink eye would bow to him and smile and whisper in respect, and it would feel even better than the wind crazily whipping his face as the swing kept rising to dangerous heights. Plus, how difficult could it be to achieve such a goal when he was so awesome? It was evident to the 8-year-old, and it dispersed all thoughts of his fresh failure and his very real status as the dead last of his class. Who cared about knowledge and academic skills? What he needed was a way to become flashy strong, preferably by tomorrow. Then he would take the awesome hat of the old man and seat in his comfy chair. The old, rusty chain of the swing decided here and then that it had had enough of the boy's ridiculously stupid delusion and thought it was time to bring Naruto down to earth. The piece of equipment chose to do so rather violently for added shock value and broke with little warning if one considered the constant squeaking of protest to be little warning as Naruto reached his apex. Naruto was catapulted out of the swing and flew an exhilarating 5 good meters before gravity made him reacquaint himself with solid ground. A sickening squelch echoed throughout the deserted schoolyard, and Naruto would have cried out his pain if the impact hadn't robbed him of his breath. Slowly, the blonde got up, cradling a broken elbow against his chest and fighting to get air to his lungs as he willed the tears of pain to go away. Fighting the pain, he was used to it. Having broken his fair share of thing over the course of his short years, he straightened himself. Reality seemed to crash on his shoulders as he gave the ruins of the swing a dark look. He wasn't stupid. He knew he wasn't awesome. He was the dead last and nowhere near ever becoming a ninja, not even mentioning Hokage. He was a clown, spending more efforts into getting people to pay attention to him than into learning how to actually be a ninja. What was he even doing in the academy? Squandering his chance, that was what? With the taste of ash in his mouth, Naruto limped away from the swing that had so rudely brought him back to reality. It took the boy half an hour to walk back to his flat. The place was a little, run-down apartment he had been given by the old man after the orphanage had deemed him old enough to take care of himself 2 years prior. He didn't want to say he knew better than the adults, but 2 years prior he had been 6 and hadn't known shit about taking care of himself. He had had to learn on the job, with a little help once in a while from a purple-haired lady wearing a cat mask. The Ambiuso were called those select few allowed to wear the animal masks had been the boy's savior when he had needed to clean his flat. Fumbling a bit with his keys, what's with his broken arm and all, he eventually got inside. He felt a proud smile at the squeaky clean sight. The temptation to be a slob had been strong, but Sister Cat had canned him enough to enforce hygiene. His stomach suddenly growled in protest, and Naruto directed his step to the kitchen where he prepared a cup of instant ramen. Why instant when it so clearly took 3 minutes for the ramen to be ready? Naruto would probably never know why. And that was one of the very few things he hated not knowing. Instead of staring at his meal in the forlorn hope that it would be ready faster, the boy took a look at his broken arm and sighed. He healed fast, faster than what was normal, he knew that, but his arm looked like it was a bit too much. He might have to go to the hospital to set the bone right. He despised going to the hospital. The nurses and the doctors treated him roughly, unlike any other patient they had. Not that they were the only part of the village population that regarded him as some undesirable. Konoha seemed to hate him for whatever reason. He had tried to ask around why people either glared at him in a mean way or outright ignored him, but he had never received any answer. He had stopped asking after the old man himself had told him no one would answer him. That had Naruto more than a little peeved, but well, there was nothing he could do about that. He didn't have any parent to ask, and the one person who treated him remotely normally had chosen to not give him any explanation, so there was that. The smell of ramen wafted over to his nose and interrupted the train of thoughts that threatened to plunge in a dark place he did not want to visit. Helping himself with his mouth to break the chopsticks, he used his left hand to messily eat his meal. The ramen thoroughly cleaned, he threw cup and chopsticks and looked at his arm again. There would be no way around it. With a groan of despair, he exited his flat and made his way to the hospital. As expected, the nurse did her best to ignore him and the doctor barely looked at him, but Naruto got his arm set the correct way as well as wrapped in a splint. It was cumbersome, but the blonde knew he wouldn't have to wear more than 2 or 3 days before he was healed. Maybe his unnatural healing was the reason people looked at him the way they didn't. Maybe he was a monster of some sort. Nah, there was no way, right? The boy slowly walked back home, the gentle breeze of late September ruffling his hair. Naruto closed his eyes and enjoyed the touch of the wind before he took a deep breath and kept on walking. Lost in between thoughts, no particularly precise idea really occupying his mind, the blonde allowed his feet to guide him. He wasn't in a hurry after all, he had already eaten. The evening was nice and he wouldn't have to go to the academy for a few days, considering a new batch of aspiring ninjas had graduated without him, which would keep the teaching staff busy. The blonde was abruptly stopped as he met headfirst with the back of a taller, stronger man. With a yelp, he fell on his bottom. Before he could restrain his too eager tongue, he erupted in indignant blabber. "Oh, you can't stop like that in the middle of the street, you know? That's just inviting people to bump into you, Tibeo." The boy internally groaned. Why couldn't he just get up and apologize, as it was totally his fault he had bumped into the stranger? Oh, right, because the stranger would most likely give a glare balancing between fearful and hateful. You said something?" The tall man answered with a drawl, one bored but not hostile eye taking in the form of a sprawled Naruto. Naruto rose his azure blue eyes up and up and up and up again until it reached the end of the tall man with white, undisciplined hair he had just collided with. The man was wearing the standard garb of Konoha most elite ninja. He was one of the few jonin. Stars momentarily replaced indignation in the blonde boy's eyes as it seemed the stranger wasn't hostile, just so incredibly bored until what the man had said registered. "Oh, I bumped into you know? Is that so?" The man drawled again. He shrugged. "You're hurt?" Naruto sputtered. No one ever asked if he was hurt, save from the old man and Sister Cat. "No," he eventually answered meekly. "Good." And at that, the man turned his back to Naruto, fished inside his pouch for a little orange book, and started walking, leaving behind a flabbergasted blonde. "What?" the boy muttered after a full minute, having finally come to his sense. Must have been dreaming or something. He pinched himself and the scenery didn't change, which unsettled the boy further. He hadn't been dreaming. Shaking his head and stashing the surreal encounter in a part of his brain to analyze later, Naruto got up and actually looked where he was. A grimace immediately marred his face. Of all possible place, he was in front of the dreaded library. "Ugh," muttered the boy, already whirling around to continue his trek home. He was taking his first step when a sudden impulse stopped him cold. He had just failed the examination today because he lacked. There was no need to tell what he lacked precisely, as he lacked everything. It took 5 full minutes of perfect immobility and intense concentration to grasp it, but eventually, An idea crystallized in the center of his mind. What if for once he actually tried? Naruto felt his eyes go wide and his jaw gape open at the utterly alien thought. His brain seemed frozen on the new idea. An idea that, for some reason, did not sound ridiculous at all. What an absolutely novel, revolutionary, terrific prospect. Academics were not subjects that especially interested him, and that was putting it quite mildly. The fact was that he never put any kind of effort in learning the materials taught at school. There was no one to help him do so, and no one would care if he didn't, so he hadn't. Instead, he had chosen to campaign for attention. However, what if he did it for himself? In his quest to be seen by others, he had ignored someone, himself. He did want to be a ninja and no one would care if he failed. No one but him, that was established facts. So why bother? Precisely for him and him alone then. A smile, almost predatory in nature, blossomed on Naruto's lips and the boy slowly turned towards the library. Yes. He would try, give it his best shot even. With a spring in his step, the blonde entered the reviled building. Naruto perused as much of the library's content as was possible for an entire week, drawing disgruntled glares from the librarian and ignoring them regally. Trying to read everything at once quickly proved to be impossible, much to Naruto's annoyance, and so the blonde did his best to focus on things that held his interest. He realized rapidly that there were none. Even with all the motivation in the world, everything he was attempting to read was so boring he had to fight to keep on. He often lost. Mathematics and sciences he didn't understand, history he didn't really care if it wasn't about the fourth Hokage, literature was mind-bogglingly sleep-inducing, and everything about ninjutsu was so cryptic he couldn't get anything useful out of what he was reading. He was ready to burn the entire building and its useless collection of demon-spawn books when the discovery happened. Naruto was in the process of tearing his hair when he found an old scroll covered in cobwebs that had been obviously forgotten there something like an aeon or two ago. Out of despair rather than real interest, the blonde grabbed the parchment and unfurled it on the table he had been occupying for an entire week. The scroll was titled The Method and it began like this. "You don't like academics," mumbled Naruto, whose face instantly lit up with a smile. That was a hook he could get behind. Because you're too stupid to understand them, and you can't be bothered to put any effort because you're also a lazy sloth. He continued on reading, his voice slowly dying the further he read the sentence. "Oi!" he exclaimed, glaring at the piece of parchment. That had felt like a personal attack there. Someone noisily shushed in his direction, and the boy returned to reading. "Well, fear not, you hold the tool to become a great ninja anyway. Written on this scroll you will find explanations dumbed down enough for your stupid brain to comprehend, and a complete guide to attaining strength that even you, and despite your idiocy, will be able to follow." Naruto had to fight the urge to tear the scroll in a million pieces. The temptation was strong, but he would get a dressing down of the age if he did so, so he resisted. Now a ninja has to eat healthy first and foremost. So get rid of all that chocolate you're secretly eating at night. You're smirking because you don't eat chocolate. Then you'll cut down on salt, and yes, ramen is way too salty. So stop with the ramen, especially the ones in cups, they are super unhealthy. Seriously, you'll stay a squid for your entire life if you don't eat anything else. Naruto slammed the scroll on the table and his head swiveled around. That was definitely way too close to home to be the work of chance. Someone was pulling a prank on him. With squinted eyes, the blonde surveilled the library but could not detect anyone. Suddenly, motion caught his gaze and he looked back down on the scroll. "Don't you dare stop reading me, you lazy ass!" With wide eyes, the boy yelped and jumped away from the scroll. It was alive! There was no other explanation for this specific line to appear as it had. Wait. Appear? Carefully inching closer to the table again, Naruto warily looked at the parchment. In front of his flabbergasted eyes, ink crawled on the scroll and formed words. "Ready to learn yet, you good for nothing?" The blonde read silently. Oi. Their first meeting had been love at first sight, really. Naruto knew it, even if his companion would deny it at every turn. "You're gross and creepy," had then read the scroll. Yes, love at first sight, definitely. After being thoroughly insulted by the changing parchment, Naruto had brought the mysterious piece of paper home. The library staff had not blinked an eye at the irregular borrowing, likely unconcerned about the fate of the decrepit-looking scroll. Well, it was too bad for them, and they were even more stupid than Naruto. Even the living parchment had agreed. It did not take long for the blonde to follow the instructions that would inscribe themselves on the scroll, the method providing Naruto with sound pieces of advice, if in a very insulting and grating way. The first thing method, for lack of a better name, That was the way Naruto referred to the scroll had been the boy's diet, insulting the blonde thoroughly each time Naruto would fix himself a cup of ramen and offering the boy numerous, easy-to-cook, and cheap alternatives. The blonde eventually bowed to the parchment, seeing as method would not teach anything until Naruto had learned to eat in a healthy way. Once his diet was fixed and method was certain there would be no relapse, he tasked Naruto with finding a secluded place. A good ninja kept his abilities a secret, and as such, trained in secret. The logic of it was quite unappealing to Naruto. Where were the flashy jutsu and the daring moves? Where was the sense of excitement, of adventure? The copious stream of insults he received as an answer, some that made him blush even, but overall considerably enriched his vocabulary, and anatomic knowledge was enough to set his mind straight. And so Naruto looked for a cave to train with method. He found one quite easily. Konoha was hidden in the leaves indeed, but it was mainly shielded by a valley. There was plenty of caverns in the surrounding cliffs, some obscured by the forest itself, and Naruto found a comfortable one, near a little stream. The boy was used to camping outside of Konoha proper, and soon, the cave turned into a second home for the boy. In his eagerness to learn, his attendance at the academy dropped considerably. Proportionally, however, his fitness reached new heights as he submitted himself to the grueling training of method. He kept at it, indifferent to the world around him, for an entire month before Sister Cat grabbed him by the ear one day that he was stocking up on supplies and, by orders of the Hokage, dragged him to his classroom. The following day, as he complained to method, the parchment informed him in a deadpan line of text that blending in was a part of keeping his ability a secret, and that Naruto was stupid for not realizing sooner that even his absence would end up being noticed. The boy pouted and refused to read the scroll for an entire day. After that incident, the boy started to attend class with a certain irregularity, popping randomly at least thrice a week, training away in his secret cave during the remaining days. He had to quickly learn to give the slip to a rather persistent chunin who taught his class, a young man named Irika. On the one hand, being forced to work on his stealth to escape the teacher so consistently made Naruto's ability in the specific field skyrocket. The chases themselves were pretty fun to boot. Naruto had never played it before, and running away from the chunin felt like it. On the other hand, in the annoying insistence of method, Naruto had to actually pay attention whenever he chose to attend class, the scroll grilling him on what he had learned during the day to check the boy had been diligent. Naruto being as hard-headed as a donkey, it took method threatening to withhold on any further training for the blonde to get to work seriously. Hence, Naruto's worldly knowledge actually increased, if shakily, incompletely, and randomly. If the boy had to be honest, it wasn't that bad. His new teacher, Irika, actually appeared to give a damn about teaching him, if only for the sake of teaching, and had a knack to come up with easy-to-grasp explanations for Naruto. He was constantly on the blonde's case because of his skipping, which in itself caused weird, unknown feelings to stir inside Naruto. The insistence of the chunin educator was endearing in a way, and Naruto started to leave small notes of thanks and encouragement each time he escaped the angry adult. Whatever the case may be, the boy undeniably got a taste for geometry and history out of Irika's constant nagging. A year before, it would have been simply impossible to even conceive such a thing. Naruto himself had to double-check that the world wasn't ending the day he felt pride at finishing his mathematics and science homework. Weeks turned into months, and the strange rhythm continued for Naruto, the boy integrating half the knowledge of the academy on one hand and the tricks and tips of method on the other. Slowly but steadily, his training regimen increased further and further, his hastened healing ability allowing to munch down double the amount of physical work. It was all fun and games for the young Uzumaki, and soon, it had been an entire year since he had found method. 85. The voice, slightly strained, echoed in the cave. The cavern should have been plunged in darkness given its natural orientation, but a fire was actually lit and burning just at the entrance. 86. The fire cracked and sparks flew. The voice kept counting, a slight tremor betraying exhaustion. 87. Something fell in the fire and sizzled. A gust of wind made the flames dance happily, and a burned log dislocated and fell, raising a flurry of new sparks. 88. Method was crazy, and Naruto was probably crazier, as he was willingly following the mad scroll's instructions. 89. Somehow stuck to the ceiling of the cave right above the fire, sweating abundantly, proud Naruto Uzumaki, 9 years old, was doing push-ups, or was it pull-ups, the flame licking his back each time he pushed on his arms. The skin was red and hot and stinging, but it was nothing. After all, the boy had already fallen into the fire once, and that had hurt. There was an ugly scar that had yet to heal on his back that was proof of that. 90. Over the course of the year, Method had instructed Naruto on a number of little things other than cooking and ridiculous strength training. One of the ninja tricks the scroll had taught the blonde was the nifty ability to stuck to any surface by molding his chakra the correct way and channeling it through the relevant appendage. The blonde had been overjoyed to learn how to use the mystical energy all ninja knew how to wield, but it had soon turned into a new way for Method to torture him. 91. Apparently, doing push-ups while sticking on the ceiling of a cave by constantly using chakra over a fire was the scroll's idea of a decent, youthful workout. Method had promised even more youthful exercises were coming. The way the scroll had worded it, this unusual insistence on youthfulness, the strange wobbly calligraphy as if unhinged, and the orange tint of the ink, all of it had sent shivers down Naruto's spine. 92. The blonde huffed for a second, one muscle in his left arm threatening rather seriously to lock up on him. 8 more to go, and he would be allowed to rest. Water. The word sounded so fresh right now. Without pause, because somehow, Method knew if Naruto interrupted his series the boy kept counting. 93. He successfully spat, his throat tight with exhaustion. His entire body was slick with sweat, both because of the effort and the fire just below him, but his fingers and his palms felt especially slippery, and for a second, Naruto feared his chakra would not be able to maintain him stuck to the ceiling. A minute later, the blonde dropped from the ceiling, barely avoiding the fire, and hunched over. His arms were shaking and his shoulders felt like a brand had been applied on them. Every muscle of his core was wound tightly, and his legs were like jelly. Even his neck was completely rigid. Yet somehow, the physical exhaustion felt amplified, strained more than it should have. All were signs of strong chakra depletion. Resisting the urge to throw up and sprawl on the ground, the boy exited the cave and breathed a deep, lung-filling gulp of fresh air. He coughed as the inhaled fumes were expelled from his system. With uncertain steps, the blonde walked the 10 meters that separated his secret training spot from the stream and fell to his knee in front of the delicious, tantalizing running water. With crazed eyes, Naruto suddenly face-planted in the stream. With coughs, snorts, and groans, the blonde boy emerged from the water looking like a wet cat, his blonde tuft of hair flat against his head, the impression reinforced by the whisker-like scars he had on his cheeks. Naruto looked for a second at his distorted reflection before he got on his feet and shook his head with energy in an attempt to dry his hair. Looking up, he saw the sky was darkening steadily. Considering it was the beginning of November, it might have been something like 5 in the evening. He still had time before it would be completely dark. Exhaling deeply, Naruto turned towards the cave and found Method. "I did it, thawed," he announced to the scroll with a beaming smile, eagerly awaiting for the ink to write the answer. "Well done, lazy ass, maybe we'll do something out of you yet," read the scroll. Naruto ignored the insult. It was the only mode of expression the parchment knew of apparently, and smiled at the praise. "Do I go for the usual?" "Yes, you idiot brat, go punch a rock, chop chop." The ink scribbled on the paper. The blonde grinned and positioned himself against a particularly flat portion of the cave wall. Assuming a simple stance he had been taught at the academy, which had been corrected by Method because frankly, those good-for-nothing teachers of yours should be ashamed, idiots the lot of them, Naruto readied himself for his knuckles to bleed once more. His legs were trembling, his arms were heavy as lead, and his entire body was protesting against the very notion of more, but the blonde soldiered on. No one would care if he stopped here, if he took a break, if he gave up. No one but him and Method. Naruto refused to disappoint the scroll. He knew it was just a stupid, magic scroll, yet disappointing the one who provided him with his guidance was a blasphemous thought. So with a huff, he punched the wall. Again and again, alternating between both fists by shifting his stance, the boy punched, slowly but surely smearing his blood on the rock, the flesh of his hands torn away to reveal the bones. Soon, had promised Method, soon it would be the very rock that would yield before Naruto. First, however, Naruto had to suffer. If anyone had bothered to look in the most remote row of tables in Konoha's library on this sunny day of June, they would have been greeted with a sight many still thought impossible. They would have exposed to the brilliant and hilarious spectacle of Naruto Uzumaki nose deep in a book, trying to make head and tails of its content. More than one would then be surprised to see the book was about medicine, a field very rarely explored by ninjas, even experienced ones. The fact it was a sunny day of June reasonably explained the absence of any public to do justice to the Uzumaki's little scene. Everybody gangsta until it's time to learn biochemistry, had mocked Method before ordering Naruto to read up on the medicinal arts, specifically anatomy, acupuncture, chakra network and balancing, and various other things. According to the scroll, one could not hope to train their body if they did not understand it, so the damnable piece of parchment had tasked Naruto to learn what the hell he was doing to his own body so that they could do it better. The boy's initially strong reluctance was easily vanquished by Method using even more colorful insults, and refusing to teach him anything else until he had put his idiot brain to work. And so Naruto once again visited the library to satisfy his strange master's orders, gathering all the material he could about ninja medicine and fighting his way through most of it, with lots of sighs, groans, wails of despair, and cries of agony. The other readers did not even bother to shush the Uzumaki boy any longer, either resolutely ignoring him, or maybe taking pleasure in his self-inflicted suffering. With tears in his eyes and snot running down his nose, Naruto was currently fighting his way through a book discussing the application of acupuncture to heal and injure the body, to balance and unbalance chakra, and to stimulate the growth of certain organs. The boy blushed when he read exactly what organ could be enhanced. He could not see any reason to enhance that specific part of the body, and for some reason, it sounded naughty. Like the adult kind of naughty. Despite his miserable outward appearance, the blonde was actually doing his best to understand and assimilate the content of the book, as method would grill him without mercy on it later on. Naruto knew that if his answers were unsatisfactory to the scroll, he would be sent back to the book again and again until he got it right. There was no sense half-assing it since he would not be allowed to anyways, so he had resolved to give it his all. His resolution did not make learning the material any easier. A lot of concepts were worded in strange, incomprehensible ways, and he had to often whisper towards method for clarification. The scroll would oblige most of the time or tell him to move his lazy ass and look in a dictionary. Days, then weeks, then months passed as Naruto crammed as much medicinal knowledge as he would understand inside his brain. His attendance record at the academy dropped spectacularly, and eventually, Iruka proceeded to drag 10-year-old him to the Hokage's office to explain himself. The two adults did not know what to answer after Naruto told them he was learning about medicine, the boy actually proving his claim by answering in depth a number of tricky questions asked by the Hokage himself. At the end of the exchange, a deal was passed. Naruto had to show up at the academy at least twice a week, Wednesday and Friday without fault, and he would be authorized to continue his self-study on the condition that he reasonably kept up with what was taught at school. The blonde saluted and scampered back to the library. It had been a Thursday after all, meaning he was free to do as he wanted. Learning about medicine did not mean Naruto had it any easier when it came to his conditioning. Method imposed increasingly long run, push-up, squat, and sit-up sessions that the boy had to complete in an increasingly short time. 6 months in his 10th years, Naruto met a strange, green-clad jonin who seemed absolutely over the moon at the sight of Naruto sweating his body off in a mad run around Konoha at 5 in the morning. The man, Might Guy was his name and Youthful Jade Beast was his title, had offered several pieces of advice to the boy, many of which Method had approved of. Save for wearing a green onesie similar to the one Might Guy was sporting, that specific point had been refused by the parchment with a large no and a threat. Apparently enthused by Naruto's youthfulness, whatever it might mean, Might Guy, who actually revealed himself to be an elite Jonin-level taijutsu specialist, offered pointers to Naruto about his taijutsu, correcting the young boy's stance, and showing him the various ways to throw a mortal punch. After surmounting his surprise at being talked to, once again positively, by a Jonin he did not know, Naruto eagerly followed Guy's directives. It was with his body constantly strained and his mind constantly fed new knowledge that Naruto hit his 11th birthday. 997. Suspended above a roaring fire, Naruto completed yet another push-up. The flames licked his back, but it did not hurt anymore. The scar he had gained the first time he had attempted the exercise, nearly 2 years ago he realized, was faded and nearly invisible, a patch of skin slightly paler than the rest. 998. A tremor coursed in his arms and a jolt of pain erupted in his shoulder just as his core contracted painfully. His body was protesting the treatment, but Naruto willed the signals away. Pain was a thing of the mind and he had forged through it time and again, learning to take as just another information his body provided, much like his sight or his smell. Pain was some sort of sixth sense by now. 999. To think that 2 years back he was nearly incapable of doing 100 measly push-ups. It nearly made him laugh, but he focused on the exercise instead, listening to his body like he had learned to over the past years. His breathing steady and his heartbeat leashed tightly, the boy pushed once more. 1000. A smile blossomed on Naruto's face as he counted the last repetition. Basking in pride for a second, he stayed stuck on the ceiling to enjoy the feeling of accomplishment washing over him before going down. With the grace of a gymnast, Naruto fell from the ceiling, avoided the fire pit, and righted himself on his feet without a hitch. Pain, the kind Naruto had learned to appreciate after countless hours of self-inflicted torture, coursed through his body. Without a sound, the boy walked towards the stream and kneeled in front of it. The boy then proceeded to faceplant in the running water as had become his habit. Some things did not change after all. A second later, Naruto emerged and shook his head, droplets of water scattering away from his blonde locks like in a shampoo commercial. Sitting in Saiza, the boy took a full minute to relax his body, his controlled but powerful breathing helping the only sound in the little clearing bar the gentle song of the stream. Eventually, Naruto rose on his feet and walked back inside the cave to stand in front of a wall. The surface had been straight and almost smooth 2 years ago. Today, it sported a sizable dent, cracks running from the crater-like impact in the web. Naruto smiled and assumed his stance. His entire body hurt, and no one would care if he stopped here, if he took a break. No one but him. When his fist met the rock, it was the latter that exploded in a shower of dirt and smoke. Hiruzen Sarutobi was the third Hokage of Konoha. It meant, in everyday words, that he was the supreme leader of the Fire Country's shinobi forces as well as the dictator of the village, and there was nobody to tell him what to do. Of course, no one put it like that. Being Hokage was all about being a gentle protector, a fatherly figure to the people. Talk about a personality cult. The village's leaders even had their face sculpted out on the major cliff towering above Konoha. Not that Hiruzen was a bad man, at least no more no less than any other dictator at the head of a military junta. Actually, he fancied himself a philanthropist and was a pacifist, but going through 2 ferocious wars as a fighter did that to a man. Compared to his homologues in neighboring countries, he was a rather tame kind of man. Konoha had been founded by 2 men who believed in the will of fire, after all, the belief that one should fight for the good of the citizen rather than for purely personal greed, and each Hokage ought to be a living embodiment of this ideal. Like it was any different in the other ninja village. Save for the notoriously mad second Tsuchikage, the other Kage weren't bloodthirsty monsters. They were simply military dictators who had the interest of their nation in mind first and foremost, and had the tendency to overwhelmingly rely on war as a mean of diplomacy. Sure, they weren't keen on free speech and other small liberties of that kind, but really, Konoha wasn't that different. Speak directly against the Hokage and you'd find yourself in a dark cell without judgment faster than you could say habeas corpus. True, some Kage were more dastardly than the others, and honestly, Hiruzen had not forgiven Kumo for their most recent attempt at extending their bloodline capacity, but it was by a margin. Hiruzen was far from guiltless. Considering Hiruzen had evolved in this pile of shit for the better part of 50 years, including close to 40 as a Kage himself, and had survived and won 2 total wars, there was one thing, however, that he was good at: not being surprised. There were still situations he did not know how to solve for the best. That was only human, and he wasn't Kami. However, situations he did not even know what to think of were not common occurrences for him. He was too old to not have an opinion on everything. As such, the behavior of one Naruto Uzumaki, a child who had way too much resting on his shoulder to be ignored by the Hokage Tower, even if said child had no idea, was a true source of puzzlement for Hiruzen. It was almost like a breath of fresh air. Naruto had been, until his 8th birthday, a bright orphan child doing his best to be noticed by the village's population, who in turn did its absolute best to completely, entirely, thoroughly ignore him. The child was subjected to an unjustified or totally justified, if the average Konoha citizen were to be believed, ostracism. He had done his best to fight with the weapons the child had, being loud, flashy, and persistent. In short, the boy was a brat, but by circumstances much more than by natural character, an adaptive strategy to preserve his sanity. The Hokage could have, should have, truth be told, considering the kid's pedigree and importance, done things to make it better. He could have run a propaganda campaign to have him accepted, could have encouraged certain key people to be seen with him, could have cashed some favors he was owed. He did none of that, and frankly, he had no explanation why. The kid seemed to endure it alright, so he had not done anything. Hiruzen did visit the kid personally once in a while, eating some ramen with him and discussing his life in between assigning 2 assassination missions. The kid always greeted him with the biggest smile he was capable of, so Hiruzen had deemed that everything was good in the hood. It obviously fucking wasn't. Hiruzen was far from being an oblivious cretin, and in all honesty, it was a miracle his negligence hadn't blown up in his face already, yet still, the Hokage did nothing. Maybe he was secretly hoping for Naruto to snap. That would teach the stupid civilians to be so stupid. Nah. That would cause a massive amount of paperwork to invade his office though, so maybe it wasn't such a good idea. He could pretend to be late and let the kid rampage. Then there would be no office anymore to deal with paperwork in. Hiruzen shook his head and dispersed the alluring thought. So anyway, Naruto was this ever-smiling orphaned kid everybody ostracized for reasons no one was allowed to speak of, and who constantly did his best to be noticed, probably to fill the void of his life. He was registered at the academy and was dead last, which wasn't surprising at all considering teachers ignored him and Naruto himself was constantly doing the clown rather than working. The situation wasn't surprising, considering no one remotely cared if the boy did well or not, which was the primary reason any child ever worked. Naruto was obviously called stupid with disdain, and Hiruzen had to resist many times going to town on the boy's teachers. If he started to punish people for how they treated the blonde kid, he would have to kill 90% of Konoha, including members of his extended family. He couldn't do that, his daughter-in-law would not let him hear the end of it. Naruto was supposed to be all that. Except that, for 2 years already, nearly 3, he wasn't. Not anymore. Hiruzen had not paid attention to the change. His ANBU looking after the boy had simply notified him that he had changed his diet and started working out, but Hiruzen had not considered it a bad thing. Rather, it was a good thing. Until it turned ridiculous, and the boy started to cut class to exercise. He ordered Cat to bring the boy back to class, and Tiger was tasked with grilling a certain green-clad jonin if he had taken an apprentice, even unofficially. The answer had been no, and Naruto had gone back to class, if irregularly. Hiruzen had cocked one eyebrow, shrugged, and allowed the matter to lie low. He would not be on Naruto's case because the kid endured so much already. The Hokage had decided to allow him nearly complete freedom. Then Naruto had started to cut class again, escaping his Chunin teacher with astounding ease and even giving the slip to his ANBU watcher once or twice until Cat upped her game. The boy's routine had been modified without apparent reason once again, the boy suddenly spending entire days in the library to read up on medicine. The root of all things seemed to be an old scroll Naruto appeared to be talking to. Hiruzen had to wonder if the boy really had finally snapped, only not in a way he had predicted. When Cat had discreetly investigated the piece of parchment, it had revealed itself to be completely blank save for the title. The method. Hiruzen knew there was something about this scroll that did ring a bell somewhere in his mind, but he could not uncover precisely where. Considering Naruto did appear to work his bottom off both physically and mentally, acquiring muscles and knowledge of the unconventional kind, Hiruzen had decided to allow it, on the condition the boy did not ignore the academy completely. The boy complied, and Hiruzen deemed him old enough to go for a time without constant watching and recalled Cat for traditional ANBU work, on a recommendation of her superior officer. Minimum interventionism was his go-to policy as far as Naruto Uzumaki was concerned. It had worked until now, and Hiruzen hoped it would continue to. The Hokage scratched his goatee and hummed. Everything would be fine, he decided eventually. ANBU operator Cat was worried about her little brother. She knew she should have been thinking about the mission, some unimportant courier interception at the edge of grass and earth countries, but she could not. The cat-masked ANBU was not in any way blood-related to the Uzumaki boy, but still, it was as if she had helped him clean his flat more than once when he had been 6 and had had the supreme honor to bathe him once or twice, having to explain in passing why it was important that he washed that part of his anatomy. The orphanage matrons had laughed for one single second when Cat had visited them to ask why she had been the one to have to explain basic male hygiene to a young boy of 6 when it should have been their job. Then the matrons had not laughed at all when Cat had unsheathed her tanto. Those heartwarming adventures did make them brother and sister, and Naruto did call her sister Cat anyway, so that was the end of the discussion. Anyway, the ANBU was worried for the little blonde. It had begun innocently, but soon enough, the boy had gained in height and in muscles, and in Cat's honest opinion, it was a crime. Naruto Uzumaki was such a cute little boy, it would be a waste to have him grow in size and bulkiness. Everything was the fault of this damn scroll the boy had found. She had seen him converse with it as if it was alive. Her investigations had yielded nothing. She was absolutely certain that the scroll was abnormal, however. She had almost decided to get rid of it, to preserve her little brother's perfect figure, but had changed her mind at the last moment. It wasn't very healthy, but Naruto seemed so happy with his scroll and his life was so miserable that she did not have the heart to take his one comfort from him. She had lost all power to influence his development, as the Hokage had reassigned her to more standard ANBU duty, taking names and breaking knees in the name of Konoha. Apparently, her little brother was old enough that constant surveillance was not needed anymore. She wanted to vehemently disagree with that. By Kami, her little brother was talking to a scroll. He had never been offered a teddy bear, so maybe he was compensating? Should she offer a teddy bear to her little brother? No, he was past that age. How about this book she had seen the other day in the bookstore? How was it again? How to Make Your Big Sister Fall for You. Right? No, that was way too daring, she couldn't. But what if she did? Cat slapped her hands against her mask and shivered, a girly kya escaping her despite herself. Tiger inched away from his companion very slowly. Cat did not notice. She dearly hoped her sensei in heaven wasn't watching at her too closely, because if she did, Cat was sure the fiery woman would descend upon her in a hail of fury and fire. Cat sensei was the mother of Naruto, after all. Kakashi dragged his feet across Konoha with a slight limp in his steps and adjusted his forehead protector over his right eye. Why he had even allowed Guy to even rope him in one of his insane training sessions, the man would never know. Facts were, he agreed to it once in a while, because, come rain and high water, Guy was one of the very few true friends Kakashi had who was still alive. And for that, he was ready to endure a few hours of grueling effort every now and then. With that deed done, however, it was time for him to take a hot bath, change cloth, and indulge in his favorite literature. The man scratched his shaggy white hair matted with sweat and looked around a few minutes after exiting the training ground he and his friend had just demolished. Exhaustion had guided his walk, and here he was not at all near his flat like he thought he was. With a groan, he decided he needed something to focus on and fished in his flak jacket for a book with an orange cover. With a sigh of content, the white-haired ninja allowed the force of habit to guide and his preternatural senses to avoid any collision with the citizenry of Konoha. It worked quite well until suddenly it didn't. Something heavy bumped into him and made him take a step back. Now, he wasn't as solid as Guy, but Kakashi was an elite jonin. His body was carved in rock and chakra was continuously coursing through it, reinforcing it further. For someone to make him take a step back by bumping into him was abnormal. Instantly on guard, Kakashi relaxed at the sight that offered itself to him. Sprawled on the ground was Naruto Uzumaki, blonde extraordinaire, pointing a finger at Kakashi as if to say something before the boy bit his tongue and looked down, contrite. "Sorry, Mr. Mask. I wasn't paying attention." Kakashi cocked his visible eyebrow. Well, that was certainly a change compared to the last time. The man eyed the blonde kid once more and his gray orb widened. When was the last time he had seen the boy exactly? Naruto seemed taller by at least 1.5 feet and had filled out with taut muscles. How old was the kid? Had Kakashi jumped through time? As he was trying to piece together why Naruto looked like he was nearly 15 rather than 12 going on 13, the boy rose on his feet and gave him a slight bow. Sorry Mr. Mask, you're okay? Mr. Mask? Was that supposed to be him? It was endearing in a way, Kakashi supposed. Especially considering he hadn't given his name to the kid. He hummed aloud. Was he okay? He was definitely shocked by Naruto's appearance. There was something he was missing here. Yeah, you? He answered distractedly. Oh, I'm fine, thanks Mr. Mask. The boy gave him a grin bright. Good, said Kakashi. He had a place to urgently visit, then he would shake himself firmly, and finally take an interest in the life of Naruto Uzumaki. The boy was supposed to be his little brother, and it seemed like he had missed too much, blind as a bat behind his slanted forehead protector, and apparently way too lost in the road of life. He hoped his sensei in heaven wasn't looking because he was sure the quiet man would descend upon him shrouded in sadness and disappointment. If there was one look Kakashi could not bear to receive, it was his sensei's special "I'm disappointed Kakashi. I know you can do better." Plus, his sensei was the boy's father after all. Naruto, seating on top of a large boulder in the middle of the forest, not far from his cave, was in a bit of a pickle. Actually, it was more of a dilemma. Or maybe the proper word was philosophical questioning? So, as he saw it, he was strong. That was a fact, and he knew that. He could quite literally reduce rock to fine powder by punching it, liquefy it if he really tried. He could run a lap around Konoha in under 1:58 seconds to be exact, and he had yet to test it, but he should be able to survive a free fall from the Hokage monument even if he landed on his head. Especially if he landed on his head, had assured method in a not at all unusual snark. At age 12, approaching 13, he surmised that this was pretty good, and that wasn't even counting the fact he had an ace up his sleeve. He knew just as well that he could become even better if he kept training. The Jonin ninjas were probably stronger than him still, and the Hokage was even above that, but that was okay. He was not even a genin yet, cut him some slack, Tebeo. He was also knowledgeable about a few useful things like medicine, and it was an acquired taste mathematics as well as history. He had never applied his medicinal knowledge to anyone other than himself, but he was pretty sure that with a bit of supervised practice, he could do something out of it. Certainly he did not know any of the fabled Ryojutsu that medical ninja knew, but one didn't really need the mystic spells to be a decent doctor. Most doctors actually didn't know the mystic spells. What truly held his fancy nowadays, however, was history. How dumb he had been to never pay attention to anything not related to the fourth Hokage. The stories about the first, the second, and the old man were pretty awesome too. He wondered if Kage from other villages had awesome stories to tell like the ones in Konoha. Now the question was, what to do with all that? He knew he had entered the library, 4 years ago now, because he wanted to excel in the academy and graduate and become a ninja, but over the passage of time, going through the grinder of methods training had become its own fun. So long ago, becoming a ninja was just a mean to be seen, to get recognition, to be acknowledged. Since he had discovered the joy of lifting, Naruto had to admit that he did not really care anymore. He worked out for himself, he was strong for himself, he was the one he did not want to disappoint. He had come to realize he did not really want to be a ninja anymore. He would not mind becoming one, sure, but he would not be disappointed if he did not. Konoha and its people? Well, they didn't care, so frankly, he wasn't sure he did. He did not feel quite comfortable with the thought, however. Konoha had paid for the orphanage, for his education, and for his lodgment as well as his food, so repaying the village felt like something he should do, if only because it was a debt. Yet it wasn't a real answer. If he paid back to Konoha every ryo the village had spent on him, what came next? Working for the village with such a hollow goal in mind was a temporary solution at best. Plus, he could definitely become a doctor or a historian to repay the debt. There was no need for him to be a ninja. He did feel, however, lonely. Method was Method, a good companion and teacher, but ultimately, Method was a scroll. A sentient, very snarky, foul-mouthed piece of parchment, but a piece of parchment all the same. Naruto would like to make some friends, human friends if at all possible. The people at the academy, the other kids in his class, weren't his friends. They still saw him as the clown even if he wasn't playing this part anymore, and they called him dead last because, well, he had been for a long time and still was one of the stragglers. It was out of a perfectly assumed choice, but it was true, all the same. It was his choice to attend the academy only 2 times a week, his choice to work through the material by himself with Method to help when the scroll could be bothered, his choice to focus on other pursuits. Obviously, despite his steep progress in mathematics and his genuine interest in history, his low attendance meant he could not know everything there was to know. Given that Method was absolutely adamant that he did not reveal any of his physical abilities, Naruto did not understand why. Really, he wasn't that strong. The boy fought without any strength. He also fought without technique apart from the academy style because his taijutsu was something Mr. Guy had shown him, and Mr. Guy had insisted those moves were to be used against enemies only. His classmates weren't friends, but they weren't enemies, so Naruto did not use his river-cutting flowing palm or his earth-shattering foundation fist, plus he wasn't quite sure Mr. Guy really intended for Naruto to learn those techniques. Sure, the taijutsu specialist had shown them to him, but he hadn't taught them, so Naruto felt a little bad, like he had stolen something. He was working hard to come up with his own techniques though, so he could soon use them to fight. However, all this holding back meant he was barely better than Shikamaru, and so he was dead last, which wasn't a very friendly nickname given to him by not very friendly people. Maybe becoming a ninja would allow him to meet new people and make friends. For some reason, being a doctor sounded like a much better way to do that. Naruto shook his head. No matter his feelings, the real crux of the matter was that if he wanted to become a ninja, he was faced with a serious problem. He couldn't do any ninjutsu, and it was required to pass the final examination. An alternative was to have the support of a jonin, but Naruto knew there was no way in hell he would ever get something like that. He barely knew 2 jonin, and if Guy was nice to him, he already had a team anyway. As for Mr. Mask, Naruto was pretty sure the man had absolutely no interest in taking a student. He did not count Sister Cat because she was busy being in ANBU. Naruto bit his lips and wondered for a second if Sister Cat would be disappointed if he did not become a ninja. What of the old man? He wasn't sure what Iruka would say. His teacher frequently repeated with a tired smile and no heat behind his words that the world was not ready for Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto wasn't sure if Iruka-sensei meant the ninja world specifically or the world at large. In the latter case, it was 12 years too late. Taking his chin in his hand, the boy's face set itself into a look of intense reflection. Should he maybe ask around? That he could do, he supposed. His acquaintances could probably take a minute of their time to counsel him regarding whether or not he should become a shinobi. The old man seemed always happy to see him because that gave him an excuse to take a break from the paperwork he seemed to always be submerged in. His decision made, Naruto hopped off the large, perfectly round rock he was sitting on. The piece of rosy-red granite, measuring something like 2 meters in diameter, had undoubtedly been part of the mountains surrounding Konoha. Around the rock were fastened large ropes the size of the boy's arm. With a huff, Naruto grabbed 2 dangling ropes and hoisted the rock on his shoulder. He was quite proud of his rock. He had carved it out by hand on Method's recommendation as a portable way to do some more strength training. He supposed it could also serve as a weapon if he dropped it on someone, considering it probably weighed around a dozen tons according to his own calculation. It might injure someone if he could take them by surprise. The surprise factor would be automatic, he supposed. No one would prepare themselves for a big rock falling on their head. That was a mistake, in Naruto's humble opinion. The 12-year-old boy started his walk towards Konoha without a care in the world, apparently unbothered by the slab of rock he was carrying on his shoulder. He wouldn't enter the village proper with it, of course. It counted as revealing his capacity after all, but most importantly, he would have to leave it outside the Hokage tower, and he did not trust people to steal it. Maybe he could train one of the cute pet in the forest to act like some sort of guard dog. The boy hummed. That was an idea to consider for later. For now, he had people to visit. Naruto stood in front of his interlocutor. His brow was furrowed, his eyes were narrowed, his nostrils were flaring, and his mouth was contorted in a grimace. The blonde, however, was not angry at the one he was speaking. Tapping his foot against the wet floor, arms crossed against his chest, the boy thought long and hard. Eventually, he took a deep, ragged breath and exhaled slowly, forcing his nerves to calm down and appeasing his features. Okay. Looking up, Naruto presented his open hand. Nice to meet ya, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto was not an expert at reading people. He knew there was an entire clan in Konoha that specialized in doing just that and more, if rumors about their secret techniques were even half true. He was still a kid who had had no one to raise him, and had been, and still was ignored by the population of his own village. People refused to talk to him, so he had to make them talk in a different way. Over the years, he started to notice a number of signs that were telling of how a person felt. Some were obvious: a guy with his shoulders all slouched, dragging his feet, and sighing a lot was depressed, and if he held a flower in his hand, then chances were he had just been dumped. Whatever that meant. Some other signs, however, were far more subtle or confusing because they could be used for several emotions, frowning for example, or really difficult to see without being up close, like the motions of the eyes. Naruto had become decent at guessing what ailed people just by observing them. Sure, his body dictionary wasn't complete. There were still signs he could detect that he could not connect to any emotion he knew, or emotions he couldn't detect signs for, but he could go by pretty well with what he had. It worked even better with people he knew or at least frequented regularly. The old man, for example, was really good at controlling all the signs that gave away his emotions, but Naruto had spent days in his office when he was small, doodling, making bubbles, and observing the Hokage, so he knew the old man pretty well. That was how he knew the old man had been lying when he had told Naruto he did not know why the boy was hated by 99% of the population. That was how he knew the old man was dissimulating something extremely serious from him right now. Everything had begun as usual. Naruto, having left his boulder a bit before entering the village, had run along the main street, bumped into Mr. Mask, apologized like a proper, polite person did because he hadn't been looking, and Mr. Mask was nice, so deserved an apology, and continued his run until he had reached the Hokage's office. Once there, he had ignored the desperate cries of the secretary, who he should give something to because she was just doing her job, but the force of habit was too strong to ignore, and barged in the old man's workroom like he owned the place. It was rude, but the Hokage himself allowed it, so Naruto just did it like that. Hey old man, how is it rockin', Tobeo? My good Naruto, you? All good, all good. Still neck deep in paperwork? As you can see. I can't wait for you to take the hat from me. The exchange had followed the routine until here, before it had turned into a train wreck. Yeah, old man, speaking of which, I'm not sure I want to be a ninja anymore. The first sign had been a single bead of sweat slowly rolling down the Hokage's balding forehead. The fact the old man had nearly choked on the smoke of his pipe did not count. Everyone was allowed to be surprised by his declaration. The sweat meant the Hokage was uncomfortable with it. What brought this on? The Hokage had asked, setting his pipe down on his desk as calmly as he was capable of appearing to be. Well, I don't really know, old man. Naruto had noticed the curious behavior of the Hokage and as such, had decided to go at it carefully. I'm not sure I'm all that interested in it, you know? I think I'd prefer being a historian. I see. Don't you like all the exercising you do, though? Being a shinobi could allow you to make use of the strength you gained. Wasn't it why you started to work out? At that, Naruto had scratched the back of his head. Yeah, but along the way, I kept at it because it was fun. Becoming a ninja wasn't about doing something fun, it was about becoming Hokage, but I realized, I don't really need to do it. I'd prefer doing something I know I enjoy. The second sign had been the Hokage audibly swallowing his saliva. The old man never did that. Naruto had been present once as Hiruzen had had to deal with a tense hostage situation, and not once had the older man done something like swallowing loudly. Well, being a ninja is fun, Naruto. You get to save princesses and kill demons, you know? The Hokage had said that as nonchalantly as he could, yet with just enough enthusiasm that it didn't sound fake. However, Naruto had seen through the lie. Because Naruto had seen what new genin did around in Konoha, and it was definitely not saving princesses and killing demons. Demons did not exist anyway. This realization brought Naruto to reflect on the signs he could read in people, and what he had picked up thus far in the old man, and reached the conclusion that the Hokage was hiding something quite serious. Why was he so insistent for Naruto to become a ninja in the first place? The blonde considered the thought as he threw the old man a long look, one eyebrow cocked up and his lips pursed in a thin, slightly crooked line of disbelief. Well, began Naruto, I'm more interested in collecting the stories of those who actually did save princesses. But doing it yourself would be cooler, right? Naruto sighed. It might, but I don't want to go through the painting fences phase before I get to the good stuff. The villagers don't like me and I sure don't want to paint their fences. That'd be humiliating and not even well paid, he could bet on it. The Hokage abruptly sucked a breath of air. Do you hate the villagers, Naruto? The blonde frowned. Why should he hate them? Certainly, they were rude and mean to him, constantly pretending he wasn't here, and it was hurtful. Although he certainly didn't like the villagers, however, they hadn't done anything for him to hate them. No? Why were you asking anyway, old man? You know it's the villagers who hate me. The Hokage sighed. It sounded both like a sigh of relief and of immense weariness. I'm sorry, Naruto, but you have to become a ninja, the older man eventually said. Silence fell in the office. Huh? Why though, Tebeo? Naruto exclaimed, confused. The old man had offered him, long ago, to be a shinobi, telling him it would earn him the acknowledgement he craved at the time. He had never outright commanded Naruto to do something. When the old man averted his eyes for a split second, anger slowly painted itself on Naruto's face. Okay, old man, what's the deal here? What do you mean I have to become a ninja? Just that, Naruto. You have to do it, you haven't got a choice, the Hokage said with a firm voice and an air of finality. Naruto looked hard at the one he called old man with affection. The Hokage was hiding something and the boy didn't like it one bit. What are you not telling me? Nothing. Now go, Naruto, I have work to do. The Hokage shooed the boy with a swift motion of his hand. Oh yeah? Naruto asked, fuming. Well, as long as you don't tell me what it is, I'm sure as heck not becoming a ninja, old man. The blonde exclaimed in a hard tone, his finger pointed accusingly at the Hokage. You didn't want to tell me why the villagers hate me. I said yes even though I knew you were lying. You didn't want to tell me anything about my parents save that they were ninja. I said okay even though I knew you were lying as well. Well, I'm through, you hear that? You're telling me or I'm not becoming nothing, Tebeo. Naruto finished, crossing his arms in front of his chest and glaring resolutely. The Hokage stared at the boy, the teenager already in front of him with wide eyes. Once again, Naruto surprised him by acting out of normal, accepted parameters. The young blonde had always been willing to obey his old man when asked, accepting the fact he wouldn't get any of his questions answered. It might have been cruel, but once again, it was the easy way to deal with the problem of Naruto knowing too much and considering certain pros and cons Konoha couldn't afford the boy to consider. One of them being possibly not becoming a ninja. Hiruzen Sarutobi hesitated. He looked left and right as if searching for support. He wrung his hands in and out. He took a deep breath. You have a think you abizilid inside you want its theories on the villagers don't like you. What? Naruto looked up and down at the massive cage of iron that lay in front of him, the bars rising too high for him to see their end and plunging too deep to see their origin. The space behind the adamantine columns seemed large and spacious, but the being contained by the cage was well large and spacious too. What are you doing here, child? A powerful voice roared, the air it displaced ruffling Naruto's hair backwards. Naruto sighed. I'm visiting my tenant, he answered at the top of his lungs, not angrily but just to make sure the one he was visiting could hear him. I'm not deaf, stupid human. A heavy silence was reigning without contest in the Hokage's office. Naruto stared at the old man as if the Sarutobi had grown another head. Could you repeat that, but like slowly? The blonde asked, trying to buy time as his brain deciphered what had just been revealed to him. Tebeo? He added as an afterthought, unsure. The Hokage took a deep breath and sighed before he straightened in his chair, only to sag with another, deeper sigh. The villagers, the reason they dislike you. The reason they hate me and ostracize me. Let's call a cat, shall we, old man, said Naruto frostily, not in the mood for wordplay. He was doing his damn best not to panic right now, and the Hokage wasn't going to try and sell him the situation as better than it was. Nope, he wasn't. Right, acknowledged the older man, sagging even further in his seat, sliding out of it like Naruto had done in the academy when he was really bored and wanted to be somewhere else. On the night you were born, as you know. The Kyuubi attacked, yes, the giant fox ran amok in Konoha and killed people, so? Well, you see, the Yondaime couldn't kill it, so he. Naruto tapped his feet on the floor impatiently and waited, his gaze affixed on the Hokage. He sealed it inside you, breathed out the older man, now nearly sprawled on the ground more than seating on his chair yet looking relaxed, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Naruto looked down at his own body with attention. Carefully, he pinched one of his cheeks firmly until it hurt and blinked 2 times. Then he blinked a 3rd time because never 2 without 3. Slowly, his head swiveled around on his neck as he observed the office with a frown. He poked himself again, in the ribs this time, but nothing changed. The blonde looked himself up and down again, from his toes wiggling in his blue shinobi sandals to the tip of his nose. Then he looked back at the Hokage with a frown and a pout. Okay, old man, I'm all for jokes and I deserve this one, probably, but come on, be serious for a second here. What? The Hokage whispered. I'm all tiny, old man, I know it, no need to mock me about it. There is no way the Kyuubi, saying that Naruto spread his arms as much as he could fit anywhere in me. He punctuated the statement by closing the palms of his hands together, leaving them separated by a hair's breadth. The Hokage sighed. Gone was the regal old man from before. No, Naruto, you don't understand. The Kyuubi was sealed inside you. Lift up your shirt and channel a bit of chakra, you'll see it. Naruto stared hard at the Hokage for 30 seconds before he sighed himself. There was no sign he could detect that the old man was pulling a fast one on him, so he did as he was told. Ah, penis, he said flatly, startling the Hokage slightly with his curse word, as some kind of spiral contained within 8 prongs appeared in black ink on his stomach. Naruto only barely knew anything about Fuinjutsu, but that seal was not for storing kunai, that was for sure. Look, I know you, or is it my fault? Oh, whatever, Naruto exclaimed, flailing his arms. I know it's not comfortable here, but you can't be like that every time I come and visit, the blonde boy said in a voice of protest. I do not want you to visit, the being behind the bars roared. I want out of here, that's it. Well, I can't, Mr. Fox, 'cause I don't want to die, Naruto screamed in turn, rolling his eyes and throwing his arms in the air. We already discussed that. So unless you have a bright idea, you won't keep me here, miserable human. Look, I know you're angry, but I'm not your prisoner, pathetic. I did not put you here. The voice of Naruto echoed like a primordial roar, shaking the foundation of the space the boy and his interlocutor were in. Chakra pulsed in a single, infinitely thin wave. The blonde was glaring at his tenant, a snarl tensing and almost cramping his feature by its intensity. The Kyuubi recoiled behind the bars of his cage. Listen, Mr. Fox. I get it, you don't want to be here. I don't want you here either. If it wouldn't kill me, I'd set you free and… What? Naruto frowned and fumed. It's super rude to interrupt Pio. What did you say about setting me free? The Kyuubi asked, uncaring of the fact he had interrupted Naruto again. Well, what I said. You've served for what now? 12 years behind bars in this damp as heck cave without seeing the sun. No criminal is treated like that. Or at least, no criminal should. You attacked Konoha and it wasn't cool, but you deserve to see the sun once in a while. Only silence answered Naruto before the Kyuubi spoke again. Naruto breathed in. And breathed out. He breathed in. And breathed out. All right, said the boy, once again looking at the Hokage, who had straightened himself and was seating, all proper, on his chair. For some reason, the sight got a vein in Naruto's forehead pulsing. The old man simply looked at him in response. All right wasn't really a question, so the blonde did not fault him. So? The boy tried before he realized it would be in vain as well. Well, try learning you have a giant godlike beast in your stomach and see if you aren't at a loss to bail. What does that gotta do with me being a ninja? The boy eventually managed to formulate a proper question after 2 other false starts. People like you are called Jinchuriki, Naruto. The other 4 great ninja villages have Jinchuriki too. Naruto cocked his eyebrow and puckered his lips out, throwing an interrogative glance at the Hokage rather than trying to choose complicated words for a spoken question. Speaking was hard for him right now. Jinchuriki are all ninja because, in case of war, they are both very powerful soldiers and primary targets. Naruto groaned. Because of what we contain? Yes. The Bijus give their host incredible powers and great physical strength. If they can channel the beast's chakra, that is. So, said Naruto, analyzing what he had just been explained and running it through his own filters. You want me to exploit the fox stuck inside me like it's a battery and go to town on Konoha's villains. the boy summarized crudely. Also, I don't have a choice. The Hokage swallowed audibly but nodded resolutely. If I still refuse? We'd be forced to transfer the beast to someone else. That means you'd die. Huh. So you'd basically force my terrible life on someone else. Wow. And kill me to boot. Naruto's gaze hardened. You suck, old man, declared the boy with a frown marring his face. Like you swallow too, he added after a second. This one was from Method, and while the blonde didn't understand the subtlety of the insult, he was quite certain the Hokage deserved this one. The older man simply sighed. You could be this village's protector, Naruto. You could. If I can't choose, I'm not a protector, I'm a slave. The boy interrupted in a dry tone. He didn't mind becoming a ninja, but being actually forced to be one was grating him the wrong way. The Hokage sighed again but stayed straight, refusing to sag in his chair again. The old and young men stared at each other, one angrily and the other resolutely. Naruto shifted his gaze first, lost in thoughts. He didn't want to fight the old man. He was pretty certain he couldn't win right now. Plus, there were at least 4 ANBU in the room with them, given the number of breaths he could hear. It was time to try another path. Method insisted that a good fighter is the one who throws his punch the correct way, but that the fighter who wins is the one who strategizes. So the blonde bashfully looked down, put his hand behind his back and twisted his right ankle slightly before he looked up with wide azure eyes brimming with tears. You'd do that to me, Grandpa? He asked in the most high-pitched, trembling voice he was capable of. He was somehow looking 6 years younger than he really was, and there was a violin playing sad music somewhere. The Hokage faltered as if mortally wounded, and looked right and left, his left hand gripping his chest as the right pushed on his chair for him to stay seated upright. I'm sorry, Naruto, whispered the aged leader. It's my duty to do so, he said, pain making his voice tight. TCH, that really sucks, old man, Naruto exclaimed, his earlier appearance gone and forgotten in the blink of an eye. The Hokage sputtered furiously before pointing at the blonde boy in outrage. It's Guy, isn't it? Guy has been teaching you his sunset genjutsu. What? No. What even is that? Naruto screamed in return. Don't try to avoid the conversation we're having, old man. You're choosing my career for me as we speak, Tebeo. Arg. This comedy has gone for long enough. Look, I'm sorry, Naruto. I really am. You can't live your life as you want it, and I can't make the decision I would like to take. Life is unfair, but that is that. Naruto recoiled slightly at the older man's sudden outburst, as it was very unusual for the Hokage to lose his calm like this. The boy waited for a second to be certain the man was done and sighed. Can I sit down? Yes. Man and boy eyed each other like cat and dog on each side of a fence. Look, Naruto, I'm sorry. Nah, it's okay, answered Naruto in a dulled voice. The boy sighed. I'm an orphan, I can't know who my parents were, the village hates me for something I didn't do, I'm the prison of a giant monster, and now I can't even choose what I'll do with my life. It's okay. The Hokage winced. He couldn't say anything to that because it was true. You know, he tried anyway, the ninja know of your condition, and they should be less biased against you, Naruto. The blonde snorted, and it told the Hokage all he needed to know. Even the ninja population was biased against Naruto. He really was the stupid leader of a stupid people. Can I at least learn whatever ninja art I'd like to learn? The Hokage eyed the boy. Naruto deserved a sweetener. What do you have in mind? Well, I've been studying medicine. The Hokage hummed. What about ninjutsu? You used to like the idea of it. Naruto sighed before a smile slowly blossomed on his face. Ha! Ninjutsu. I can't become a ninja, old man, I can't perform any of the 3 academy jutsus. I'll fail the graduation exam and you'll be sponsored into a team, Naruto, informed the Hokage, cutting the boy's sudden enthusiasm short. Look, being a ninja isn't so bad. You'll be in a team of people your age who don't know about your burden, and your sensei will not hold any ill will against you, I can promise you that. Those comrades will become like your family, Naruto. The boy perked up at the mention of a family before his morale fell just as swiftly. They'll be people from my class, and they don't like me either. You'll change their mind, Naruto, I know you will. I know you're very strong, you know a lot about medicine, you are an actual genius when it comes to mathematics somehow, and you read more history books than any boy your age. You'll surprise them, and in the real world, they will quickly forget the way you were in the academy. Naruto stayed silent, and the Hokage didn't add anything. For a full minute, that eventually stretched into another one, not a sound was heard in the office. Okay, said Naruto slowly, as if he was testing and tasting the word. Okay, he repeated more firmly, but I want an all-you-can-eat evening at Ichiraku on your tab. The Hokage gave the boy a smile. That I can manage. You'll also get a special authorization to read on Iryujitsu in the ninja library. Also, added the older man as he took a slip of paper and scribbled something on it. I want you to learn that jutsu, he said, presenting a folded piece of paper to Naruto. What is it? The blonde asked, doubtful there was any point in him even trying. It's very, very chakra intensive, so you should be able to use it. Huh? What does that got to do with me? You have a lot of chakra, Naruto. Way too much and way too potent for any of the academy jutsu. You working out didn't help your case. You know about yin and yang chakra and balancing, correct? The blonde nodded. I believe you have a lot of yang chakra and it unbalances your chakra as a whole. This jutsu is nearly purely yang based. Oh. Okay then. What's its name? Shadow Clone Jutsu. It took Naruto 1 hour to produce a shadow clone, the solid chakra construct mimicking his happiness at the success. The jutsu was a bribe, but it didn't mean Naruto couldn't enjoy learning it. It took another for the boy to adjust the chakra output to produce exactly the number of replicas he wanted. It took a third to discover shadow clones transmitted their memories and their residual chakra upon being dispelled. While he was overjoyed at the prospect such a capability offered him, now Naruto had to go in Konoha to fetch a bag of groceries one of his clones had been carrying before being dispelled in an accident. The blonde sighed. He was bumping into people way too much as of late. He didn't have much hope of finding the bag, but he had spent a good wad of rios, so he had to at least try and find it. Lowering his feet on the ground from the handstand fingerstand, to be exact position he had been keeping, Naruto went to the stream to wash the grim of exercise off his face. He didn't even shudder as the cold water splashed against his cheeks, long since used to the bite of the refreshing liquid. He found the sensation revitalizing nowadays. Donning a long-sleeved orange shirt, he hid a lean and toned body, all steel-made sinew and obsidian-cut muscles under a lightly tanned skin. He was barely recognizable from the scrawny child he had been 4 years ago. Puberty had barreled into him rather hard as well, and he was taller, wider, and his face had undergone several transformations. His baby fat, which had made his cheek puffier than they had any right to be, had melted, and the shape of his head was now oval rather than round, 2 sharp cheekbones framing it rather severely. His wide, round eyes were now more and more slanted. His jawline had been squared and pulled back, giving him a strong, willful chin. His hair was still a messy shock of spiky blonde locks, that had not evolved one bit. The blonde eyed himself critically in the wobbly reflection the stream was giving him. He had accepted the changes as the inevitable results of him growing up and working out. He had read enough of medicinal books to know what was happening to him. However, his new appearance had not gone unnoticed and apparently roused some kind of commotion, because Naruto regularly caught all kind of people staring at him like they could not believe what they were seeing. As their eyes weren't full of negative goo, Naruto made sure to greet them with a smile and continue on his way, more than a bit weirded out by the strange behavior. The weirdest thing was the looks he was attracting at the academy. There were girls looking at him the way they looked at Sasuke Uchiha. Frankly, the dark-haired boy was a bit of a bastard, but honestly, Naruto could totally understand his behavior now. Being eyed like a juicy piece of meat was creepy and certainly not something to be envious of like Naruto remembered he used to be. Plus, that wasn't the only problem with being looked at intently by girls. Nearly every other boy looked at Naruto with something akin to murder in their eyes. The same way Naruto had looked at Sasuke, something like 4 years ago. The blonde did not like the thought of it, but maybe he ought to apologize to the Uchiha. He had been a brat after all, and it wasn't like the Uchiha actually wanted the attention he was receiving. The boy had just always done his best to, well, actually be the best, but if there was one thing to be said about Sasuke, it was that the boy was not one to brag. Heck, the Uchiha was almost mute. Rather, he actually despised the attention he garnered. Naruto understood though. He had done his best for the 8 first years of his life to attract any kind of attention on him, and had gotten nothing but disdain and glares. On the other side of the spectrum, Sasuke, the best student of their class, was showered with praises and shown perfect smiles, but it was just as fake. People put him on a pedestal, decided he was unattainable, and so Sasuke was. The fact the Uchiha boy was always brooding silently and darkly in a corner absolutely did not help matters though. Naruto knew why the Uchiha was like this. Like everyone else, he had heard about the massacre of the Uchiha clan. Sasuke had been there, the helpless witness of his entire family being slaughtered. That would make anyone broody, in Naruto's opinion. Now he knew that. At the time, however, he could only hear the praises and see the smiles directed at someone other than him, and he was jealous. Well, adults were supposed to be responsible and children were supposed to be brats, right? Except Naruto had yet to have an adult in his life and well, Sasuke had lost those he had. So yay? Adults were slowly going extinct in Konoha anyway. Heck, the old man had been ridiculous just the day before when Naruto had demanded to know the truth. Why so much secret? What had he been afraid of? Naruto getting angry and going to town on the civilians? Well, first, they would deserve it in the first place because seriously, confusing him with the Kyuubi was seriously stupid, but bullying him all his life for it was downright mean and deserving retribution. Anyway, the Hokage had looked like a child caught with the hand in the cookie jar and Naruto knew what he was talking about. What was the old man expecting to happen by keeping it a secret from him? Literally everyone knew but him. How was that fair? What was the game at play here? So yeah, no adult anymore in Konoha. Apart from Irika Yumino obviously. That man was a real adult with a sense of what was proper, who had a solid head upon solid shoulders, and who took his responsibilities seriously. Naruto nodded, satisfied with his analysis. He'd definitely gift Irika-sensei something before the end of the year. He wondered what his teacher liked. As his thoughts turned to just what he could buy to his teacher, Naruto's eyes widened as why he had interrupted his exercises came back to him in the first place. "Aw, my groceries." The boy abruptly blinked out of existence, leaves fluttering wildly and trees groaning in a sudden powerful rush of wind as the sound of thunder echoed in the little clearing. Kakashi was dragging his feet in the streets of Konoha, nose deep in his usual literature, and drawing a various array of looks, from starry-eyed to vaguely disgusted. Everyone knew the orange books the one-eyed ninja liked to read were nothing but porn, and the fact he dared to consume them in public was ticking a number of people the wrong way. The children who were too young to know what pornography was didn't care about the weird orange book the tall, white-haired ninja was always seen with. All they could pay attention to was his slanted forehead protector. He is like a pirate. Dash, his black silken face mask, he must look so handsome under that. And his overall nonchalance. Kakashi exuded coolness, and damn it if he didn't cultivate it. Someone had to stop Guy and his youthfulness to pervert the mind of the youths. Plus, he wasn't even reading pornography, So anyway, Kakashi was doing his best to campaign secretly against Guy's own abhorrent life philosophy when something bumped into him. For the second time in the span of a year, someone bumped into him as he was reading in the streets, overriding his preternatural senses and making him stumble back a step. That was so uncool. Mildly angered, Kakashi's gray eye immediately found the offender only to see him disappear in a puff of smoke. Something fell on the ground in a noisy concert of crumpled plastic and paper. Kakashi blinked thrice rapidly and slowly reached out with his hand into the smoke. Nothing. Panic crept up and insidiously invaded the ninja's mind. In a rare moment of irrationality, the Jonin wondered how in the hell he had reduced his sensei's son to smoke by bumping into him. Naruto looked so strong for his age. How in the log had that happened? For a second, Kakashi flailed, still holding on his orange book. Then, the cold rationality of a brilliant, educated mind consolidated by years of experience told Kakashi that Naruto somehow knew the Shadow Clone Jutsu. How cool was that? And Kami, damn it, had he passed through a temporal gate again? How in the log could Naruto know such a jutsu? The boy hadn't even graduated from the academy yet. Kakashi closed his book and slid it into one of his pockets before he massaged his lone eye. There was really something he was missing. He knew he had told himself he would invest himself a bit more in the life of his late sensei's son, and he hadn't because it was a painful can of worms for him, but now the boy was learning things Kakashi was supposed to teach him. That felt unacceptable. Kakashi didn't know why, but it was what his heart was telling him. He should have been happy that the boy was learning and progressing as a ninja hopeful, but the feeling wasn't here. Rather, Kakashi had the sentiment he was missing out. His mind immediately came to the rescue. It was alright after all. He had been the death of everyone he had been close to. He couldn't afford to be the death of Naruto too. He couldn't do that to his late sensei. Just as he was thinking that, Kakashi knew what the man would have done if he had ever heard Kakashi say something approaching that. Oh yes, Kakashi sensei would have given him the stare. That one stare Kakashi couldn't bear to receive. The one stare that told him he was stupid to even think that way. Then he would ruffle his hair, which annoyed Kakashi to no end. But sensei was dead, his mind informed him, and there was no one to give him the stare now, no one to tell him it was okay to be a part of Naruto's life, no one to tell him he wouldn't be the death of the child. There was no one to ruffle his hair anymore. Kakashi looked down on the bag of groceries. There was barely any food inside aside from a large pack of rice and a few vegetables. Worry spiked in the man's heart. Was Naruto even eating meat? And why was the bag so full of medical supplies? How would a child hurt himself so much to need such an amount of bandages and denatured alcohol? What if Naruto was hurt right now and his shadow clone had been on its way with direly needed medicine, and now all hope of the boy surviving was moot because of Kakashi? Once again, cold rationality slammed away the spiraling thoughts of anguish. If Naruto had been in any grave danger, the shadow clone would not have bothered with vegetables. Taking a deep breath in, Kakashi calmed himself and wondered what to do with the bag. It wasn't his bag, he could leave the bag here. Naruto would find the bag sometime during the day. Maybe he should go discuss what to do with his favorite listener. Talking to the rock standing for the fallen always seemed to give him direction when he was lost on the road of life. Kakashi was seriously considering the option of fleeing, operating a tactical retreat, corrected his mind from the bag of groceries when, for the third time in a year and the second time in a day, someone bumped into him. So uncool, he had time to think as he was forced to take a step to recover his balance, forward this time. Mr. Mask. The cry, half joy half surprise, tore Kakashi out of his thoughts. In front of him stood Naruto, perfectly healthy, very slightly out of breath, and sporting a large grin. Oh man, thanks for looking over the bag, Mr. Mask. I thought for sure I'd lose all that. Kakashi managed a shaky smile, which couldn't be seen behind his face mask save for the crinkling of his one eye. You're welcome, he breathed out. You okay, Mr. Mask? No, Kakashi was not okay. The boy once again managed to look like he was 2 years older than he actually was. And his face. His face was Kakashi's worst nightmare and most soothing dream. His face was like two persons dead for 12 years had been brought back to life in a single child. His face was the perfect balance between the welcoming roundness of the boy's mother and the dangerous sharpness of his father. Kakashi blinked. Maybe there was someone to give him the stare after all. Stir Mask? Yeah, I'm good. Kakashi managed to mumble. Naruto scratched the back of his head, apparently unsure of what to do as Kakashi was having his little mental breakdown. He was so like his father. Okay, good to know, Tibeo, the boy said with a slightly nervous chuckle, still undecided on a course of action as Kakashi silently offered a prayer to heaven. He was so like his mother. If you're okay, I can take my groceries? Kakashi couldn't answer, his mind foggy and his mouth too dry and his throat too tight. Mr. Mask? The tall jonin nearly choked. Those blue eyes were looking at him with such concern. Kakashi was a stranger to Naruto. No one should be that concerned over a stranger. Kakashi, he croaked out. The name is Kakashi, boy. He repeated, his voice steady this time. Naruto beamed a smile his way. Nice to meet you, Kakashi-san. I'm Naruto. I know, whispered Kakashi behind his mask. Sorry for bumping into your clone, he said. Oh, no worry, Kakashi-san. Naruto bowed lightly to him. Thank you again for watching over the bag, he said, taking said bag in a quick motion. See nothing, boy. Say, shadow clone is a pretty advanced technique, how come you know it? Naruto's smile faltered for a second. Well, the Hokage gave it to me cause I can't do the normal clone and I needed ninjutsu to graduate the academy. Oh, so you're training to be a ninja? The boys flattered again, and he looked down briefly. Yeah. Okay. That wasn't good. Kakashi was missing something here. Did Naruto not want to be a ninja? But if that were the case then. The brilliant mind of Kakashi supplied him with an answer almost immediately. Of course, Kyubi. The boy had no choice. Kakashi started to sweat nervously. What was he supposed to say to that? Well, it isn't a bad path of life. What the fuck was he saying and who the hell was he kidding? Kakashi sighed. Kakashi-san? You don't want to be a ninja, am I right? The tall man asked in a tired drawl. Naruto startled, apparently surprised he had been read so easily and shifted from one foot to the other for a few seconds, his eyes lowered. Before soon, however, he looked back up with a crooked smile, 100-yard stare and a dull tone and shrugged. Well, I don't have much of a choice anyway. Kakashi internally grimaced. Apparently, the boy knew of his burden and had been made aware of what it meant. Well, penis. Naruto wasn't sure what was happening exactly nor how it had come to happen, but he was having tea with Mr. Mask Kakashi-san, he mentally corrected. Their conversation in the street had devolved into awkward silence until Kakashi had taken his bag of groceries out of Naruto's hands and gestured for the genin hopeful to follow him. They had eventually stranded themselves in a little cafe, where a waitress who actually genuinely smiled at Naruto with pink dusting her cheeks served them a large kettle of tea and 2 cups. Naruto eyed the tall jonin, unsure of what they were doing here. He had never been invited to have tea with anyone before, ramen sure but never tea. He wasn't even sure why it was happening in the first place, so needless to say, he was confused. Kakashi-san? The tall man didn't answer and sipped some of his tea, sighing in a relaxed way a second after. Naruto scratched the line of his jaw in puzzlement. He didn't dislike Mr. Mask, heck, the man actually smiled. I smiled at him and was polite to him, which Naruto returned good-naturedly, but he didn't know the jonin. If anything, Naruto knew Might Guy better than Kakashi. He didn't even have Kakashi's name. Plus, the boy wasn't sure he liked the man's vibe. Might Guy was loud, very loud, and the word youth and its declinations formed a too large part of his vocabulary, but it was his way of expressing his enthusiasm at living life, and Naruto could get behind that. On the other hand, the little he had seen from Kakashi screamed aloof. It was supposed to be cool according to some people he had overheard, but frankly, for Naruto that just wasn't it. That made the invitation to drink tea even more surprising. Slowly, almost wary of some kind of prank, Naruto brought his cup to his lips and tasted the hot beverage. It was good, black tea, and there seemed to be no strange substance added to it apart from an almost indiscernible touch of honey. The blonde took a larger sip before he returned his gaze to the ninja seated across from him. Kakashi-san? He tried again. If you ever become a ninja, I'll be your sensei, the man said without any sort of preamble. Huh? Kakashi sighed. I made a promise to myself long ago, that I would become your teacher if you made genin. I never realized that maybe you wouldn't even want to be a genin, he said, talking as much to himself as to Naruto. What do you want to be anyway? Naruto sputtered a bit. Why was this man, a stranger, mainly telling him this kind of things? Had they met before bumping into each other in front of the library 4 years ago? The blonde racked his brain, but came short of a satisfying answer. He was pretty sure it was the third time in all they had ever met. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the tall man. No offense, Kakashi-san, but what's it to you? He prodded, his tone neutral. For a second, Kakashi looked like a deer caught in headlights before his one eye looked down, and he sheepishly scratched the back of his head. Yeah, I suppose you're right, said the jonin with a strangely shaky voice. It's not really my business, is it? He asked rhetorically, his eye downcast and his shoulders slouched. Silence fell over the two, only disturbed by the hushed conversations the other patrons were having. History, said Naruto suddenly, prompted to answer by the miserable sight that Kakashi was composing. For now, the blonde decided, he could answer the man questions. Soon, however, the man would have to answer some of his own. History is my hobby, and I studied a lot, so I was thinking maybe I could do something of it. I also studied medicine though, and I came to like it, I'd say, so if I'm to be a ninja I suppose I could be an Iryonin. Naruto explained with a shrug of his shoulders. Kakashi chuckled as his lone eye suddenly affixed itself on Naruto, something like fondness shining in the gray iris, startling Naruto vaguely. Before the blonde could ask himself any question about what he was seeing and if he was really seeing it, Kakashi spoke with warmth. I know it's not what you really want, but I'll do my best to help you become the best Iryonin ever. How about that? Now Naruto was positively weirded out by this man who showing him such support despite seemingly not really knowing him. That got the boy frowning. He didn't want to think like that, but the fact was that the villagers normally despised him, and the one person he thought was supporting him had just told him his future was out of his hands. Suspicion began to creep up and reared its ugly head in a corner of Naruto's mind. No offense, Kakashi-san, and not that I don't appreciate the thought, but Naruto's eyes narrowed and hardened into diamonds. Why the heck would you help me? What am I to you? Kakashi watched over his cup of tea as the boy seated across from him went through several emotions and back. There was concern in the obi's blue eyes, but once Kakashi had invited him to have tea with him, it had morphed into puzzlement. The boy had then been clearly weirded out by his behavior, much to Kakashi's secret hurt. He was supposed to be cool, damn it, only to finally grow suspicious of Kakashi's declaration. The boy had never received help from anyone, and the first time he was offered some by a stranger, admittedly, he was immediately wary of it rather than accepting of it without question. Naruto was already a ninja. Kakashi sighed. I cannot answer that. That'd be breaking a law, he said with regrets heavy in his voice. What? Naruto exclaimed in stupefaction more than in outrage. However, said Kakashi in a mumble, if you were to accidentally discover things about my past and make the connections, then I couldn't be blamed. Naruto frowned, gasped for air, frowned anew, and eventually gazed into nothingness as he scratched the line of his jaw. You definitely would be blamed, he pointed out absent-mindedly. I mean, you just admitted you had some kind of connection with me. Kakashi smiled behind his face mask. We are not obligated to tell anyone. he suggested as he observed the gears in Naruto's mind turning as the boy was back to observing him. Are we secret brothers or something? The blonde asked with a raised eyebrow, causing Kakashi to choke on his tea. "'Cause no offense, but I don't see it, Kakashi-san." Kakashi's sweat dropped, and shook his head. No, we are not blood-related, Naruto." Naruto eyed him up and down and smiled slightly. "Good," the boy decided. "You might be tall, but I don't want to grow up to be gloomy like you," he declared with a smirk. "I'm not gloomy," protested Kakashi immediately. "I'm cool." "Ah. As if. You're totally gloomy, Kakashi-san. All hunched over and dragging your feet, pa." "I am not." "R2. You know what? Maybe you should be my brother. This way you'd become awesome like me." Naruto beamed a smile his way. Kakashi floundered with the notion. No! He was supposed to be the big brother. Why couldn't Naruto realize how cool he was? Wait, why were they even discussing that in the first place? No way, Kakashi protested, shaking his head valiantly against the ridiculous idea. "I'm the older brother here, there's no way around that." "What? Why? Just 'cause you're all tall and stuff." "No way, wait a year and I'm definitely going to be taller than you." Naruto counterattacked with his arm crossed across his chest. "It's not that, Naruto, it's just that I am older than you." "Yeah, well, we're not blood related anyway, so I vote that we don't decide who is the older brother by age only," Naruto argued, nodding his head as if what he had just said made perfect sense. "Impossible," Kakashi retorted. "It's not what your father wanted anyway," he protested in the heat of the moment. It was the wide eyes of Naruto that told him he had just made a mistake. He replayed the last part of the exchange in his mind, and his visible eye widened as he realized that he indeed had made a mistake. Well. Shit. Naruto was seating in his cave, the round boulder of his own carving sealing the entrance shut. A powerful flashlight was standing upright and illuminating the dark interior. The blonde was eyeing the faithful piece of parchment he had dragged around for 4 entire years. "Thawed?" the blonde mumbled, dispirited. "What's up?" the ink scribbled. Naruto contemplated the scroll, unsure of what he wanted to say. Someone knew who his father was, which meant they knew who his mother was. They could not reveal it to him because of a law, which meant the Hokage knew, which meant the old man had, as Naruto had known, already lied to him. It was simply confirmation. Naruto really wanted to break something, but he had nothing on hand and there was no way he would damage his boulder. He had taken too much time to carve and smooth the round piece of granite to waste it in a surge of anger. The Hokage knew who his parents were, had lied to him by saying he didn't know, and for some reason had refused to tell an orphan boy anything about his lineage. The thought was playing in repeat in Naruto's mind, going round and round in the boy's head, echoing in every single nook and cranny of his brain. And there was something that was boiling in his stomach. The sensation was filling him with a disagreeable heat, was making his hands shake, and was causing his teeth to grind together. He really needed to break something. "I'm angry," whispered Naruto, his voice so low it was almost inaudible, as if he was afraid of the admission. "About what, idiot student of mine?" Naruto ignored the jib that wasn't even a good one and sighed. What was he angry for? Being denied the basic right to know of his family? Being lied to all his life by someone he thought he could trust? Being treated unfairly again? "About the way I've been treated," Naruto eventually chewed out. "Well," scribbled the scroll after a few seconds, "life isn't fair, so." "No," said Naruto while shaking his head vigorously. "Life is a neutral ground and some assholes make it fucking difficult for the vast majority of people who didn't ask anything." "You might be simplifying the thing a little here, you little twerp," prodded the parchment. "What happened exactly?" "I've been lied to all my life," Naruto began in a dead voice. "I knew nothing about my burden until a day ago. I thought I had the choice to live my life, but I actually don't, and the identity of my parents have been hidden from me as well. I can't think of any reason the Hokage would inflict that on me. The QB is an open truth, it damns me to a life I've no real interest in, and my identity, my birthright was denied." The boy counted on his hands. "You know what it looks like? It looks like the Hokage actually hates me and wants me to be miserable," he finished, his voice rising and rising until it was a scream of anger that punctuated his statement. "Maybe not, idiot disciple. Maybe the old man had super good reasons, maybe he is just an asshole. What you gonna do about it? Break his knees?" Naruto looked at the scroll, but his eyes were gazing at emptiness. "I don't know. And I'm not sure I even want to break his knees. The boy fell silent for a few seconds before a crooked smile twisted his lips upright. I can declare war on him, though. Would you help me, Thought? The scroll scribbled fast. Not helping you killing anyone. Your Hokage might be an ass, but he hasn't threatened your life directly yet. Naruto pouted and glanced sideways at the scroll. He literally told me he'd rip the Kyuubi out of me and kill me if he had to. Nah, idiot disciple, as you're now, that wouldn't kill you. More like make you weak in the stomach for a bit. Method dismissed in a jerk of black ink. Anyway, what do you have in mind? Naruto cocked a brow at the scroll's assurance. The blonde didn't know anything about Fuinjutsu and the condition of Jinchuriki, so he couldn't tell who was in the right here. Was the scroll putting too much faith in Naruto's talents, or had the Hokage no idea of how it actually worked? The blonde stored the thought for later, and eyed the scroll again. I'm pranking him into next year. I need to be stealthy. Like, very, very stealthy. A smiley doodle etched itself on the scroll. Fear not, idiot disciple, you're as immovable as the mountain already. You'll be gentle as the forest when I'm done with you. Naruto smiled excitedly. How am I going to do that, Thad? Get naked. Oi. Now. My name is Konohamaru Sarutobi. I am the 8th Hokage, student of the 7th, Toad Sage and amateur historian. Much like my master, and probably because of him, I developed an interest in history during my time under his guidance. This little book you now hold is my humble attempt to cast light onto the events we know today as the lineage war that was waged in Konoha in 78 after founding between my master, who was 12 at the time, and the regular and special forces of the village. This war saw the utter defeat of the Konohan ninja forces and the surrender of the 3rd Hokage, my grandfather, to the terms of my master. We are getting ahead of ourselves, however, so let us begin with the beginning. My master is an orphan, and while this status is not rare for people in Konoha, the customs and laws of our village make it so that, normally, they are properly taken care of. It was not the case for my master. Due to his status as the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki and the misplaced fear and hate the civilians still held even so long after the attack, my master was ostracized by most of the Konoha population. By his own admission, my master was never the victim of physical violence. However, people often misunderstand the true extent of what he still had to endure. His ostracization was complete, which brought its own slew of problems, especially for a 12-year-old boy without day-to-day support. The orphanage got rid of him as soon as they could, at age 6, and my master was expected to take care of himself. He had no knowledge of hygiene, cleaning, cooking, or what else. Only through the help of Yugogo Yuzuki, at the time an agent of ANBU, did my master not live in squalor. It did not mean his life was remotely easy. People ignored him thoroughly to the point they would not serve him in their business. He could not buy food, seeing as cashiers would ignore him, was refused any and all play since parents would drive their children away from him, and he was refused education since teachers would not answer his questions. Those are well-known facts about the life of my master, but I think that to understand the war, it was necessary to remind them to the reader briefly. It is important to remember as well that my master had, at the time, no idea of why he was even treated like that. The last bit of crucial information is that my master had no idea of the identity of his parents, the knowledge of them denied by my own grandfather. A shame our family is still trying to recover from. Surprisingly, my master did not hate the population for his treatment. On the other hand, he did not love them either. This sentiment, along with an admittedly negligent gestion of the situation by the standing Hokage at the time, brought my master to consider not following the path of the ninja. My master fancied himself more of a historian or a doctor, and while today those choices would be seen as perfectly acceptable, the simple fact that my master was considering them caused an upheaval. Not being a ninja was an impossibility, given that my master, as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, was considered as a weapon of high importance by the Hokage, as per the military doctrine of those times. We are speaking of an year before the Treaty of Red Iron Crater was signed. My grandfather, the 3rd Hokage, was at the time one of the very few who did treat my master humanly. I am not proud of him, however. Given his powers, he was in a position to do much better than paying my master a visit once in a while and paying for his ramen. No matter, my master did see my grandfather as a person he could trust, and hence, when doubts about his professional career came to him, he naturally went to the Hokage. My grandfather made his first mistake that day when, after finally revealing his condition of Jinchuriki to my master, he strong-armed him into becoming a ninja. That was a diplomatic mistake he would come to regret in the coming months. At the time, my master did not dislike the idea of being a ninja. He simply was not certain of what he truly wanted to do. What was important to him, however, was that he had been promised the freedom to become whatever he wanted. This promise, given to him as a very young boy by the Hokage, had been forgotten by my grandfather but vividly remembered by my master. Hence why the notion of being forced into something by the one person he thought he could trust felt especially distasteful to my master, who then decided he would not be a ninja on principle and as a way to protest his treatment. He was 12 and even my master could be what would be colloquially known as a brat. His decision was not immediate, however. My master was at first cowed by the Hokage, who made his second mistake by giving him the Shadow Clone Jutsu to learn, as a way of passing the required ninjutsu section of the Academy graduation examination. By an extraordinary concourse of circumstances, this led to my master meeting his first teacher, one Kakashi Hatake, 6th Hokage and Hound Caller. The exact way their meeting went is unknown, but my master learned that day that Hatake knew his parent but could not, by law, reveal it to him. My master, for the first time in his life according to him, was furious against someone that was not himself. He was furious against the Hokage and by extension the village. It was the first of his now well-known bout of anger. Konoha had no idea, at the time, what would befall them. It began without a single sound. My master proceeded first to disappear in a spot that is even today known by him, and him alone. He replaced himself with shadow clones to not arouse suspicion and apparently trained his stealth and various other skills for a month with the help of countless shadow clones, the Jutsu neural link allowing him incredibly fast progress. Then, a month after my master disappeared, the third Hokage received a letter, unsigned, demanding in no uncertain terms that the lineage of one Uzumaki Naruto be revealed, under due threat of exponential retaliatory pranking upon the entire village if such conditions weren't met quickly. My grandfather made his third mistake that day by ripping the letter in half and ordering two ANBU to find and bring Naruto to him. Needless to say, the ANBU were unsuccessful as the one Naruto they brought before the third Hokage revealed himself to be a clone after my grandfather told him in no uncertain terms that the identity of his parents was unknown. That was the fourth mistake of the Sandaime, and the last as the clone declared the war started, and immediately dispelled. After that strange episode, nothing happened for 3 days and the threat of my master was dismissed, foolishly. My master, like a true strategist, lulled Konoha into a false sense of security before he struck. On the morning of the 4th day after the war declaration, people awoke to see the main street of Konoha entirely painted in bright hues of orange, yellow, and blue. The street itself was littered with thousands of flyers reading "The fox is your friend, don't believe the Hokage Tower." The incident, while embarrassing, was quickly put under wrap and gave countless genin teams D-rank mission to wash away the paint. Secretly, ANBU was dispatched to various warehouses in an attempt to locate where exactly my master had procured so much paint. Their mission could not be completed in time. Indeed, the following day, a giant orange fox had been painted over the Hokage mountain. On the forehead of each past Kage was the same message: "The fox is your friend, don't believe the Hokage Tower." Once again, it was taken as an opportunity for D-rank mission. ANBU was told to continue to try to locate the paint used, and the Hokage talked to the people in the evening, assuring them that everything was under control. My master heard that, apparently, because on the morning of the 3rd day, a new message had appeared next to the old one: "The Hokage is lying, he doesn't have anything under control." This had been painted on every house of Konoha and signed by a stylized fox head. On the Hokage Tower itself, my master had somehow painted very well, escalation it is my grandfather did not realize then how much of a threat this actually was. On the 4th day, the deer of the Nara clan disappeared, the hounds of the Inuzuka were doused in pheromones, the food caches of the Akimichi were plundered and completely emptied, the Yamanaka were poisoned with an inoffensive hallucinogenic drug, the Abdurrahim lost control of their insects to countless jars of honey, the Hyuga found their laundry to be tinted in all the colors of the rainbow. The Sarutobi found apes plundering their kitchen, and the lone Uchiha was gifted with an angry, striped cat. Covering each clan compound was the now dreaded message: "The fox is your friend, the Hokage Tower doesn't have anything under control." ANBU was dispatched all around the village and the forest around it in search of my master. They came back empty-handed. Patrols were tripled and the Black Ops were put in high alert, a state normally reserved for a possible enemy invasion. The following day, Konoha as a whole was holding its breath, waiting to see what had been inflicted to them. Countless civilians found themselves locked in their own home. The lock mysteriously changed during the night. The stocks of various merchants were swapped with one another. The butcher of Main Street opened his fridge room to find rows upon rows of fishes, while the tailor in Shodai Avenue opened his business to reveal the hosts of the 9th Street's animal shop. And those were merely examples of the chaos that reigned this day in Konoha. Once again, everywhere, the message could be seen: "Don't trust Hokage Tower, they lie." Needless to say that the citizens of Konoha were, by now, rather upset at everything that was happening. It is interesting to say that the anger, far from being focused on my master, was actually halved between him and the Hokage, who was seen as responsible for the pranking spree that the demon brat had decided to enter. It was expected of the Hokage to stop my master, and the fact that he couldn't angered many civilians. The ninjas were torn between admiration and anger. NBU once again came back without anything to show. Patrols were quintupled, the military was set in high alert, and in an allocution, the Hokage once again affirmed he had everything under control and that Konoha didn't negotiate with terrorists. On the 6th day, there was a single message on the Hokage tower. Very well, Phase 3. It had been painted in black and there was a pirate skull next to it. The end of the week and the 7th came without incident, and tension reached unprecedented height as every ninja Konoha had to spare were searching the forest for my master. In vain, needless to say. On the 8th day after the declaration of war, chaos, true chaos like Konoha had never known, struck Konoha. Electricity was cut and people realized that their drink water had been poisoned the day before with a very powerful laxative, bringing countless people to the hospital which had been bombed with stink explosives. Mission scrolls had disappeared from the mission office, effectively paralyzing Konoha's business, while flyers had been dropped along the various roads to the village, asking potential clients to go sit on a dildo, and seemingly signed by the third Hokage himself. Countless patrols fell to harmless but painful and humiliating traps that littered the forest around the village. The people who weren't sick were in the streets that night, brandishing panels and protesting, screaming for the Hokage to explain himself and for some, to give his resignation letter. A few fights erupted between ninjas tasked with maintaining order and protesters. 12 people were wounded. Seeing as there is no higher level of alert than high alert, the Hokage had no choice but to declare Konoha in a state of war. Very well, was the answer scribbled for all to see on the Hokage monument. The next day, NBU headquarters was flushed with a paralysis gas that forensic could not identify. Taking down 50 agents or so, the TNI low security cells were opened, allowing 100 low-profile and low-danger targets to escape, and the cryptology department had their hardware hacked or destroyed, rendering them incapable of doing their work. The Hokage Tower once again was in no capacity to ensure business, and the Hokage's pipe had been stolen. The city itself was bathed in the pungent smell of gutter and rotten fish. When ninjas were sent to investigate, they found a large portion of the evacuation network flooded or blocked, causing the odor to rise. Several colonies of rats were released upon unsuspecting citizens, pillaging and plundering their home. Shinobi and kunoichi found their gear blunted and could not repair them, given the forges were forcefully closed due to an invasion of tarantulas from the Forest of Death. The citizens who were physically able to protested for the entire day, ninja marching alongside them, demanding the Hokage to leave his office or give the fox what he wanted. On the evening of the 9th day, a white flag was unfurled from the Hokage Tower. You don't think it was a bit much? Look, Kakashi-san. There comes a time when a man has to put his foot down and say enough. Still, the laxative and the rats were vicious, Naruto. I didn't want to go that far, but the Hokage forced my hand. What would you have done if he hadn't surrendered? Him. I had one more phase in mind I could have escalated to. Let's just say phase 4 would have left nothing here. You wouldn't have killed people, right? Kill? Nah. I'm just saying Konoha would have become a place impossible to inhabit with what I had in mind. I see. I'm glad you didn't have to go that far. I also want to thank you for sparing me as you did. Well, you were the one who informed me about my parents. My debt is now paid. That wasn't a debt. A younger brother doesn't have to repay the older. You're so not my older brother, Kakashi-san. I obviously am the older brother here. I was the one who brought Konoha to its knees. I was the one who got the Hokage to unconditionally surrender and accept my terms. I was the one who just fought and won a war by myself. I feel like I deserve to be the older brother. And who exactly coached you for an entire month on asymmetrical warfare? It's my victory as much as yours. What? You didn't lay out the plan, you didn't prepare the resources needed, and you certainly didn't participate, so it's my victory. Ungrateful little brother. Who gave you the money to buy all that paint? It's at least 30% my win. Ugh, fine. Fine. That still doesn't mean you're my older brother. That's what your father wanted. Well, that's not what I want, and that's not what you need, Mr. Broody. And Mr. What? You're brooding, always. You think you look cool, but you're so aloof. You need a firm hand in your life, and that's me. From now on, you'll go out with Gaisen and company more often, and you're forbidden to stay more than an hour per week at the stone. What? That's right. As an older brother, it's my mission to make sure you're happy. You brat! Today was the day of the academy graduation exam. Naruto eyed the entrance of the place he had visited so little for the past 4 years and had nearly deserted in the past 6 months. After he had won the war, the Hokage had told him the identity of his parents. The boy and the old man had had a very long discussion. Naruto had broken the Hokage's desk and thrown the pieces of wood through the windows at the end of it, but had agreed to several things after understanding the old man's point of view and worries and receiving his apologies, as well as a coupon for unlimited ramen on the Hokage Tower's tab, along with a couple of odd things here and there. He was peeved about it, but becoming a ninja seemed to be necessary after all. Being host to the Kyuubi put him in danger whether he wanted it or not, and by learning the craft of a shinobi, Naruto would ensure his survival by becoming powerful. Given that he would be allowed to pursue his passions, the blonde had relented. There was also the matter that his father, the fourth Hokage himself, had been one of the most powerful shinobi of Konoha ever, and Naruto had formed a clear objective after learning the bastard had been the one to seal the Kyuubi inside his own son only to kick the bucket and leave him in a village that hated him. Naruto was going to become so monstrous he would relegate Minato Namikaze and his stupid Hiraishin no Jutsu to a footnote in history books. Naruto was more than a bit angry at his progenitor for doing what he had done, and since the man was dead since a while already, Naruto would make him pay the way he knew how. The famous Yellow Flash would soon be eclipsed by well, he still had to find himself a cool surname. He didn't trust the shinobi population to come up with something good. Yellow Flash, really? What was his father supposed to be, a lamp? He had considered reducing Konoha to ruins for a second, but after a short moment of introspection, he had decided that mass murder was not his thing and he preferred to leave that to the Uchiha trader. He had also envisioned going to IWA and becoming a ninja there just for the heck of it, and make his father spin in his tomb, but he didn't want to leave his little brother Kakashi to be all broody by himself in Konoha. So he was staying. He'd make sure to stay as bratty as possible, he'd maintain the citizens in fear of the prank god and they would regret not treating him fairly. He'd rub in their face what they had done to the son of their hero, and he supposed he would defend the village if push came to shove. Naruto had no doubt it would be awesome. Now, however, he had an examination to pass. He had asked the old man to not reveal his heritage before he made genin so that he could crush the exam and flabbergast his good-for-nothing teachers without positive bias. He was especially impatient to see the rage in Mizuki's eyes. That guy was a real asshole, and Naruto's pranker instincts had repeatedly told him he was up to no good. Genin exam, here I come. Naruto was far from the first to enter the classroom. Students his age were discussing in hushed whispers about how they would become awesome ninjas and kick asses. The blonde couldn't help but smile at how awesome they would be once tasked with washing the aftermath of his personal war on the village. Indeed, even a few months after, there were still traces of the havoc he had wrought upon Konoha. Nonchalantly, Naruto seated himself next to the brooding scion of the Uchiha clan. Sasuke Uchiha, dark-haired, dark-eyed, white-skinned, handsome, and the boy was, no question, if one ignored his terrible haircut, was looking outside the window, his eyes resolutely refusing to meet anyone in the classroom, his fingers laced under his chin, a frown marring his brow. Naruto had no doubt the boy was contemplating how to painfully kill the assassin of his clan. The blonde had no doubt the Uchiha boy would explode before soon if he stayed like that. Too much seriousness killed seriousness. Heck, even method forced Naruto to rest in between 2 insane workouts, insisting that apart from killing himself, the boy would not accomplish anything if he pushed too far. Naruto had a suspicion Sasuke was like that, and if he didn't loosen up, he would burn before doing much of his life. Naruto baka. Give me the seat next to Sasuke-kun. A girl screeched in his ears. Naruto turned his head to see one Sakura Haruno looking at him with lightning in her green eyes and her fist raised and ready to punch. Her face was as red as her chipao, and her peculiar, long pink hair were fluttering in a non-existent wind, probably to make her appear more intimidating. Vaguely impressed by the hair trick, the blonde threw a discreet glance at Sasuke next to him. It was fleeting, here not even for a moment, but Naruto saw it. The plea, the prayer in the Uchiha's eyes. Don't. Please. The blonde shrugged and started to rise from his seat. I'll you one. The eyes of Sasuke told him reluctantly. Naruto smiled crookedly, sat and turned to Sakura again. No. I was here first. Too bad for you, Sakura. The girl faltered. It was highly unusual for a boy to refuse her, and for a moment, she was lost. After a few seconds, however, she rose her fist again and endeavored to plant it in Naruto's face. The sound of flesh impacting flesh echoed meatily in the classroom, and the students let their discussion to die down to look for the source of the commotion. Soon, the eyes of all those present found the sight of Sakura Haruno with her fist squished against Naruto Uzumaki's face. The girl was grimacing and the blonde seemed indifferent. A second of absolute silence fled away from the classroom before Sakura jumped back, shaking her hitting hand as if she had badly burned herself. "Oh wow! What the heck, what are you made of, Naruto baka?" yelled Sakura in outrage. "Steel reinforced concrete," Naruto deadpanned with a very serious expression on his face. "If you weren't made in marshmallow, you wouldn't have hurt yourself," he chided. "What do you mean, made in marshmallow?" "Just what I mean. Now go sit somewhere else, you're disturbing class, Sakura." "Waha?" "Come on, shoo," gestured the blonde boy with a vague motion of his hand. "Irika-sensei is here." Sakura startled and twisted with haste. Indeed, Irika, the class teacher, was waiting for whatever was happening to resolve itself, the vein pulsing in his forehead the sign his patience was running low. "Sorry, Irika-sensei." "Thank you, Sakura. By the way, as you're still under my authority until tomorrow, you'll stay after class to copy some lines. You don't hit a comrade outside of a spar. Understood?" "Yes, Irika-sensei," the girl squeaked, contrite. "Good," said Irika with a smile. "Now sit down!" He suddenly bellowed, his head growing to 5 times its normal volume, and his voice reaching the deafening power of a foghorn, the displaced air ruffling a few feathers and undoing a few hairdos. Looking like an explosive note had just detonated mere feet away from her head, Sakura silently sat down, looking distinctly like some sort of disturbed hedgehog. "All right, children, today is the day of the examination. It will happen in 4 parts, written examination, then taijutsu, shurikenjutsu, and ninjutsu. You'll have 1 hour to finish the written examination after the top. I'll now distribute the paper, don't turn before the go or you'll be disqualified, no question. Understood?" A chorus of "Hi, sensei," answered the man, and he nodded with satisfaction. It took barely a minute to distribute the exam to everyone, and the go was given. Naruto turned his sheet with confidence. He would not answer everything but maths, history and strategy would be a piece of cake. An hour later, the teenagers were ordered to hand over their exam and guided outside for the shurikenjutsu examination. Naruto exited the classroom with a large smile on his face and a wink to Irika, who smiled in return. The academy had everything necessary to train young wannabe killers, and as such, there were numerous fields for target practice and taijutsu sparring and katas within the precinct. Naruto's class was taken to a range for shurikenjutsu, a long alley with walls on either side to avoid stray shuriken injuring any passers-by. There were several targets, some of them moving 20 to 30 meters beyond a firing line. The goal of the examination was simple: kill at least 12 out of the 20 targets with 25 shuriken. A piece of cake and more of a formality for those present here. Aburame Shino went first, and as the discreet boy that he was, scored a relatively low 14. It was evident to Naruto that the Aburame heir could have done much better if he had been tempted to do so, but Aburame ninjas were the absolute master at blending in the background. Which was a pretty impressive feat considering they were all pretty fucking tall and dressed in an unmistakable way, with their long coat and sunglasses. Yet they were some of the best infiltrators of Konoha somehow. Naruto's classmates were called one after the other, Choji Akimichi scoring a 15, Kiba Inuzuka, heir to the Inuzuka clan, went for a more flamboyant performance, and scoring a 17, Shikamaru Nara barely made it past the requirement by scoring a 12 with all 25 shuriken. Eventually it was Sasuke's turn. As the Uchiha boy advanced to the firing line, his fan club cheered him on. A faint grimace of exasperation painted itself on the boy's face, but he quickly got his impassible countenance back and flawlessly scored a 20 out of 20 with 4 shurikens to spare. "Uzumaki Naruto," called Mizuki. Naruto accepted the throwing stars from the Chunin, immediately noticing they were blunted. The boy shrugged and smiled at his teacher before positioning himself at the firing line. In a fluid motion too fast to appear as anything but a blur to those watching, he threw 13 shurikens. The steel stars whistled in the air and impacted the cutouts, each made out of a solid plank of pinewood. The first target struck caved in a shower of powdered wood, the star ricocheting off it to bury itself in another target's head, practically sawing it off. A quarter of a second later, another shuriken bore a hole the size of a frying pan in the torso of another target, continuing straight on to tear the head of another, and bending a third. All 8 moving targets fell from their railing, mangled to dust, in an eerie synchronization. The last 3 shurikens took down 2 targets each. Naruto eyed the result of his volley and clicked his tongue in annoyance. "Damn it, only 19. I missed the last ricochet," he said, giving his 12 remaining shurikens to a gaping Mizuki. "Come on, let's proceed," urged the blonde after a few seconds of uncomfortable silence, gesturing to the few students who hadn't had their turn yet. "We don't have all day." "All right," mumbled Mizuki, who had to go to another firing range given Naruto had just annihilated the one they had been using. Yamanaka Ino was the last to throw her shuriken, scoring an 18 as was expected of a clan heiress. Nobody made any comment about her good performance. Students were too busy looking at Naruto like he had grown a second head. Alright all, let's proceed to taijutsu, Mizuki ordered, his voice once again firm and his jaw firmly locked in a closed position. The class moved to one of the sparring areas. It was a simple field of barren earth where several circles had been drawn in the soil to delimit fighting rings. Iruka was waiting for the class with 2 other teachers. Okay everyone, the exercise is simple. We'll fight at genin level and you're expected to hold your ground or better, get us out of the circle in under 2 minutes. The fastest you get us out, the better your score. Now let's begin. Once again, students were called to one of 2 circles where Mizuki and one of the unknown teacher, a large man with a big nose, would test them before giving the score to Iruka or his colleague, a petite woman with large round glasses. The clan heirs each made a good showing save for Shino, whose performance was average, and Shikamaru, who barely held his own during the required 2 minutes. When it was the turn of Sasuke, his fan club once again cheered, getting an exhausted eye roll from the normally Marmorian boy. Naruto was called exactly at the same time and found himself against Mizuki, who was eyeing him calculatingly. Hajime called Iruka for both matches. Mizuki immediately sprung into action, darting against Naruto at speed far superior to that of a genin. Naruto unfolded a newspaper and started reading. The teacher had closed the distance between him and the blonde boy, his feet sliding to find a solid balance for his upcoming punch. Naruto held a cup for a clone to pour him some tea. The blonde hummed with satisfaction as he took a whiff of the fuming beverage. Mizuki armed a punch against his hips, readying himself for a strike of the age, one hit that would send the blonde genin standing before him seemingly frozen and vibrating in fear. Mizuki had no doubt out the circle, barring him from becoming a genin. Naruto carefully folded his newspaper and threw a glance at the Chunin. With a yawn, he crossed his arms against his chest and frowned. Couldn't the guy go a tiny bit faster here? He had places to be. Well, not really, but his brother had invited him for tea and a reading session, and Naruto was kind of impatient to discover whatever priceless literature Kakashi had promised him if he passed. Mizuki fired his punch at high Chunin speed, much too fast for any genin to see coming. Iruka cried something, but the teacher was too far away to stop it now. Naruto would be knocked out by the punch, and then Mizuki could rope the demon brat in his plan. With the sound of glass breaking, the thoughts of the teacher stopped abruptly, along with the world. He felt something go up in his body, starting from his groin and ending somewhere in his throat. He coughed a drop of blood and felt himself be lifted up by some incomprehensible force. There was a collective wince as all the males and assistants dropped to their knees. A bird squeaked in indignation and sympathy. Then, a wave of unspeakable pain washed over Mizuki, that robbed him of his breath and his consciousness. Match stop, sputtered a pale Iruka, his eyes wide at the sight of his colleague hanging unconscious from Naruto's right feet after a phenomenal shot in the privates. Medic, squeaked the teacher, flashbacks from his last mission gone wrong flashing before his eyes. Dude! Kiba suddenly exclaimed from the sideline, his hand protectively placed in front of his own jewels. Not cool. Naruto turned to the Inuzuka, who flinched slightly but held his ground and his disapproving look. The blonde turned back to the unconscious form of Mizuki and then to the Inuzuka again. Too much? Way too much, dude. Everyone felt that. All the gathered boys nodded in assent, and Naruto chuckled while scratching the back of his head. Sorry guys. Didn't mean it. But that's why Iruka said to protect that part, right? Well, yeah, agreed Kiba hesitantly, but still. Okay, placated Naruto with his hands raised, the prone form of Mizuki gathered in a fetal position behind him. The blonde turned back and nudged the unconscious teacher with his feet. Sorry, sensei. And Naruto Uzumaki, match over, 2 seconds, choked Iruka. Nobody was caring any more at this point. Sasuke simply recovered faster than his opponent and tripped him over the circle, enjoying a victory in 15 seconds and slinking back into the crowd as unseen as he could manage, his fangirls too preoccupied to really pay him any attention. Ninja, right? In the end, Mizuki was carried away to the hospital by a team of A and BU, and the exam was promptly finished without further incident. Everyone, time for the last part of the exam, the ninjutsu portion. Let's get to it. Once again, the class changed location and neared a fake clearing littered with logs of all size and shape. Okay, we're going to test you at random, meaning you'll be asked to do one of the Academy 3 as decided by a dice roll. The better the mastery, the higher the grade. Now let's begin. One by one the students were called inside the clearing, leaving it by another side so that no one from the remaining candidates could know who had passed and left with a headband and who hadn't. Eventually came the turn of Naruto. The blonde stepped inside the clearing after Iruka, who went to sit next to the petite woman with glasses. Okay Naruto, you're going to show us the substitution jutsu please. Naruto nodded eagerly, and a second after Naruto was still nodding eagerly, except there was another Naruto right behind Iruka and the woman who was nodding eagerly. Done, both boys clamored, startling the two teachers. The Naruto in front dispelled in a puff of smoke, occasioning a shocked gasp from the two instructors. Iruka recovered quickly and fished in a bag next to him for a forehead protector bearing the leaf insignia. He looked at the headband long and hard, mumbled the world isn't ready, looked some more only to eventually shrug in indifference, whispering not my problem and handing it over to Naruto. Congratulations Naruto, you're a ninja now. Naruto beamed him a smile and bowed deeply. Thanks, Iruka-sensei. You know, it was pretty fun to have you as a teacher, even if I wasn't here a lot. You are a pretty cool sensei, Tibeo said the blonde, his shining smile still in place before it faltered, and suddenly, Naruto looked bashful. I know I wasn't the best student, but I want to thank you, but I didn't really know what you like, so I got you this, mumbled Naruto with a dusting of pink over his cheeks, holding a small present to his sensei out of nowhere. Iruka swallowed thickly, his throat suddenly tight, and blinked several times to clear his eyes from the annoying bit of dust that had settled inside. Thanks, Naruto. The blonde smiled again. I hope I hit the mark. And with that, the boy darted away, forehead protector in hand. With slightly trembling hands, Iruka unwrapped his present, revealing a small, costly-looking book. The ins and outs of barrier ninjutsu, whispered the Chunin instructor, his eyes widening before he looked up. How did he even know? He wondered aloud. Iruka-san? The woman inquired, curious as to what the boy had gifted his sensei. Iruka looked at the woman, giving her a puzzled look. It's a book on barrier ninjutsu. It's a domain I've been wanting to try out for a while now, but I never found the time. I just have no idea how Naruto could know I was interested. The woman shrugged. Luck? Iruka nodded hesitantly. He wasn't sure there was such a thing as luck when Naruto was concerned. None of the teachers noticed the Naruto hidden behind them, who silently dispelled with a smile on his face. Naruto walked through the streets of Konoha until he reached the address Kakashi had given him. He looked at the door of the high-standing building he was standing in front of. Damn those filthy rich jonins, and their fancy condominiums. Naruto rang at the Hataki name, and a second later, a buzzing noise informed him the door was open. The boy climbed the flight of stairs until he reached the fifth and last story. One of the doors was ajar, and Naruto knocked before inviting himself inside. Hey Kakashi and it's Naruto. After a very serious, deadly competition of Janken in 100 matches, Naruto had lost the right to be the older brother. The blonde was a bit peeved about it, especially considering he had lost to Kakashi using the Sharingan to read his movements and guess his next move. He should have gone faster. But hey, ninja, right? Kakashi exited his kitchen, wearing an atrocious pink apron which Naruto stared at for a full 5 seconds before he shuddered. And they said orange is ugly, he mumbled, taking here and then the decision that this apron would not be tolerated. It was no wonder his brother was a brooding mess. Hey Naruto. Kakashi smiled. So you passed. Well yeah. Wasn't complicated really. Naruto exclaimed with a smile that failed to reveal a frowning, pensive expression. It was almost too easy now that I think about it. I wonder if there is another surprise for us. Kakashi felt a bead of sweat roll down his spine. Nah, you have the headband now, they can't say anything anymore, right? Naruto thought about it for 3 solid seconds before he smiled. Yeah, no way, right? The two adoptive brothers laughed good-naturedly, although Kakashi did sound a bit strained. Naruto dismissed it. There were many reasons a jonin could be anxious, especially one wearing such an ugly apron. So, said the boy, what book did you want to show me? Well, Kakashi answered with enthusiasm peeking in his tone. I have a couple you might find interesting. Let me show you the place first, though. Kakashi lived, as Naruto had guessed, in a condominium for filthy rich jonin. Everything was spacious, clean, made by a designer, and whatnot. The boy noted that it was decorated with a taste he would never have guessed his older brother possessed. Eventually, he was shown to Kakashi's personal library. The room was large, larger than it had any right to be, and each wall was actually a large bookcase, from one end to another, from floor to ceiling. There had to be at least 1,000 books here. The coolest thing, however, was the 3 gorgeous chairs that looked sinfully comfortable. Holy Kami, whispered Naruto. Not bad, huh? The blonde turned to his brother with stars in his eyes. That is so cool. Kakashi smiled. Tea should be ready. Naruto nodded distractedly and turned his attention to the countless book. With careful steps, as if he was afraid that walking too loudly would disturb something, he approached one bookcase. His eyes lit up at the titles he saw. Awesome, Kakashi and I. Naruto breathed out. Naruto was leisurely sprawled in one of the most comfortable seats in existence on this miserable world of angles and hardness. In his hands he was holding a limited, signed edition of the History of the Elemental Nations by none other than Tobirama Senju, the second Hokage. The man had been a brilliant scholar during his life, a better researcher and inventor than Kage, in Naruto's humble opinion, and each one of his writings were treasures troves of information. Obviously, that meant they were nearly impossible to find. Next to Naruto, also Naruto but a different one, was reading a little journal with a leather cover. The small book, covered in neat handwriting, was a gift from the yondaime to his last student, consigning inside an insane wealth of knowledge about Fuinjutsu. It was a handwritten book, it was literally unique, and Naruto was holding it open on his lap, trying to puzzle its wondrous content. His father might be a bit of a bastard and not much of a father, but damn Kami, he was a brilliant seal master. Kakashi was lounging in the third and last chair, his lone eye perusing the content of a little orange book. The tea had since long gone cold, and it was getting dark outside, but the two brothers were too absorbed in their readings to care. Until Naruto's stomach growled loudly in protest. It sounded like a mining shaft was caving in, like a volcano was awakening, like the earth was opening in two. Huh. I might need something to eat, commented the boy coolly. Yes, it would seem so, said the second Naruto with indifference, his nose still in his book. Kakashi smiled. You're famished, aren't you? Naruto scratched the back of his head and chuckled. Yup, didn't see time pass. You hungry, bro? Ichiraku ramen, best ramen in town, my treat. He offered. Kakashi hummed before he nodded. Ramen it is. I am Ichiraku, the sole daughter of Tuchi Ichiraku, renowned ramen chef of Konoha, was busying herself behind the counter of her family's small restaurant when a most peculiar vision came to her on this early evening. She was pretty certain the sun was setting westwards like usual, and the sky was already tinted in all kinds of orange and mauve for it, yet she had to blink when a second star suddenly appeared in front of her. Hey, I am Chan. The sun greeted with enthusiasm and in a voice that was definitely familiar. Meet my brother. The young woman blinked again and scratched her brown eyes, too full of light and brightness to see clearly. Shielding her vision, she saw that there was some sort of moon behind the ball of shininess that was sparkling in front of her. She blinked a third time and her sight finally adjusted, revealing a young, blonde teenager that was full in transitioning between boyishly cute to handsome standing in front of her counter. Following him was a tall, lanky man with spiky white hair and an eye smile, the lower part of his face hidden behind black silk. The maiden felt her heart suddenly race. Who was this pair of stunningly good-looking, or at least, Ayam assumed the masked man was as handsome as his little brother, Shinobi's? The waitress wondered with stars in her eyes. Hi, Ayam-chan, hello? The voice called again, unsuccessful in cutting through the fog that was paralyzing the young woman's mind. Oh. Naruto. Long time no see, boy. Ayam heard her father call from deeper in the kitchen. That tore the veil that had fallen in front of her eyes, and the waitress finally recognized Naruto. She felt her cheeks flush in embarrassment and surprise both. How come she hadn't recognized her first customer and favorite boy, and when had Naruto become so handsome? And who was this tall, mysterious man behind him he called a brother? Ayam was certain that the blonde boy, poor boy, had no family. Hello Naruto-kun. She sputtered eventually with a flustered smile on her lips. Her for dinner? She asked, deciding to operate in known boundaries. Yep, bringing my Nai-chan too to taste your awesome ramens. Ayam eyed the boy's brother and smiled. Sure, please take a seat. So, Naruto. Her father bellowed with a chuckling voice. Where have you been? The blonde smiled. First, Tuchi, Kakashi, he said while pointing at the tall man next to him. Kakashi, Master Tuchi. The two older men exchanged a greeting, Kakashi throwing a light yo and the cook formally welcoming the new guest in his establishment. What will it be for you two gentlemen? Miso with extra pork and a dash of chili for me. Naruto ordered immediately with the ease of someone who knew the place well. Kakashi pointed at the boy. I'll have that too if possible, but without the additional chili. Coming right up, Tuchi assured with a large smile. Anything to drink? I'll have some lemonade. A beer for me. It took a second for the drinks to be set on the counter. Well, cheer, said Naruto, who proceeded to throw down half his bottle of lemonade in 2 large gulps. Kakashi simply raised his glass a little and drank through the silk of his face mask somehow. Ayam sighed in vague disappointment before she returned to her cooking, still allowing her ears to listen to what was being said. So? Tucci pressed his question, curious of where the boy had been. It had been a while since she and her father had seen their favorite customer, and Ayam would be lying if she said she hadn't been worried a little. Well, I was here and there, you know? Asking myself questions about my future and learning ninja stuff. Tucci pointed at the boy's headband. You're a shinobi now, though. Yup. And I intend to celebrate tonight. It's on the Hokage's tab. Ayam could hear the brow of her father rise. Are you sure? Yup, negotiated that with him not long ago. I have a credit of 10,000 ryo of ramen here. That should hold me for a while, explained the boy who suddenly beamed a smile. Noodles for free for the next 5 years, he exclaimed. That's a nice present, I suppose, said Tucci, unsure of what to think. Ayam could, once again, hear and guess the mischievous smile that bloomed on the blonde's lips. Oh, but it's not a present, the blonde chuckled. It's a spoil of war. A spoil of war? Tucci repeated, not understanding. I still can't believe you got that out of your victory, commented Kakashi, who sipped on his beer. Meh, Konoha lost. Konoha pays the price. Konoha lost? What are you talking about, Naruto? Tucci asked with a frown. The boy waved his hand. Nothing important, Tucci. I was the one Konoha fought 2 months ago. Ayam whirled on her feet, eyes wide and mouth agape. She pointed a trembling finger at the blonde and stammered. Why you caused all this chaos? Naruto shrugged and pointed a thumb at Kakashi. I had help. The maiden frowned dangerously. Naruto, do you realize how worried we were? Konoha was suddenly at war with someone unknown, you had disappeared somewhere unknown, and it was absolute chaos. You could have warned us. She lectured, not amused by the boy's pranking exploit if her expression was anything to go by. Relax, Ayam-chan, nothing happened to me. Rather, I happened to Konoha, he said with a broad grin. Tucci guffawed and shook his head, muttering something that sounded suspiciously like those damn Uzumaki. It could have been I need more wasabi though, Ayam wasn't sure. The daughter narrowed her eyes suspiciously at her father. Did he know something she didn't about Naruto? She glared for a second before turning to face Kakashi. And you helped him? What kind of big brother allow his younger sibling to do something so dangerous? She chastised, her arms crossed over her breast. Kakashi eyed her with a seriousness she wasn't prepared for. The kind of big brother who has full confidence in his little bro's capacities. He affirmed with a light but firm voice. Naruto beamed at the praise. Kakashi and I is awesome, Ayam-chan, and he helped a lot, so don't be hard on him. The blonde explained. Ayam huffed and served her 2 guests their order. She wasn't really mad at either of them. She was more disappointed to not have been part of Naruto's war on Konoha. She didn't know really, be part of the logistic and in charge of the food, maybe? Her disappointment increased when Kakashi started eating his noodles very neatly, like a proper gentleman, contrary to Naruto with his face mask still on. Naruto gave his ninja registration card to the Hokage and waited. Hiruzen looked at the card and at the photo. That's how do I say that? Not me at all. Precisely. You'll have to redo it, Naruto. No. Hiruzen sighed. No? I'm a ninja. People aren't supposed to know what I look like. The fewer photos of the real me there is, the better it is. You know I'm one of your ninjas. I'm already wearing a headband that announces my allegiance to the entire world, which is pretty hecking stupid if you ask me, so let's not add to it, shall we? The Hokage hummed. Well, it would make a lot of sense if you were an Anbu, but you're simply a genin. And? There is ninja and genin. Well, for administrative purpose, it'd be good to have your real face. Again, I can't see why, observed Naruto. Anyone ever looks at those photos anyway? Apart from spies, I mean? Naruto, please? Nope. Are you being like that because it's me? The old man pleaded with another sigh. Maybe, Naruto answered with a grin. If you can't accept this photo, then I fear I won't become a ninja, he said with a shrug of his shoulders. You know I could have one of my ANBU take a photo of you. Like any spies in the village, I imagine. At least that'd make them work on their stealth. The boy taunted with a snark, his eyes glancing at one corner of the office where he could hear one of the Hokage's silent protectors' breath slightly too loud. I can't understand how you got so good in a matter of a month. Naruto smiled deviously. A good ninja doesn't reveal his tricks, am I right? I thought you didn't want to be one. Yup, but you want me to be one, so I'll act like one. Hiruzen sighed again. I don't know what to do with you. Yes, you do, you just don't know if you'll suffer my snark for much longer or finally try to punish for insubordination. I'm curious about it myself. I still have things in mind for Konoha, the blonde said flippantly. Naruto, you can't fight my authority at every corner. We have a deal. Which never included anything about respecting anything, just me becoming a ninja. Being a ninja includes respecting your officers, the old man pointed out. I guess that's a matter of interpretation then. Naruto shrugged. You should have negotiated harder. I can't have a seemingly rebellious Jinchuriki in my forces, Naruto. It's funny because it really doesn't sound like it would be my problem. It could be. So we're back to threatening each other, huh? Do you want another war? I have no problems waging another one, let me be clear on that. You left me to my own devices when I was 6, allowed the entire villagers to screw me over time and again. You didn't even bother to check if I was taught properly, and suddenly I'm your all-important weapon? Nah, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this work. We struck a deal I'm gonna respect, but don't expect me to put in any effort. Hiruzen gave the boy a hurt look. Am I that evil to you, Naruto? He breathed out painfully. What do you want me to say to that? Naruto retorted, slightly incredulous. You pretended like buying me ramen once in a while and calling me your grandson was okay, but you couldn't be bothered to do shit about my situation. You spared a glance once every so often, and as long as I was alive, all was right in the world. Is that evil enough to you? Would you have allowed it with any other kid? What if it had been your grandson? The Hokage looked like he had been hit for a second before he composed himself a neutral mask. I regret. You regret, but that doesn't change what I had to endure nor what I'm forced into. I'm your weapon, I get it, albeit. Don't expect me to love you like a human. What did you believe I was? Some sort of happy-go-lucky idiot with an endless pool of love that'd accept everything thrown at his face without ever saying anything? Naruto questioned with a frown. Well. Don't answer that, cut Naruto with a shudder. Anyway, you burned that ship. Is that how it's going to be? The Hokage asked with a tired voice. You made it that way. Naruto pointed out evenly. I'm sorry. Truly I am. You can be sorry all you want, I'm still the one paying for everything, as usual. You being sorry doesn't make my life better, you being sorry doesn't allow me my freedom. Life isn't fair. Yes, my own father and yourself made sure mine wouldn't be. Now if you'll excuse me, you'll have some visit in 3, 2, 1. Engar Gigi, Korra. A little boy wrapped up in a blue scarf bellowed while barging in the office, the door pushed open suddenly. Naruto sidestepped the windmilling little brown-haired boy who tripped on his overly long scarf and fell face first on the floor. Ow, Gigi, a trap? That's smart. Are you alright? And there was no trap here, honorable grandson. A ninja exclaimed from the door, causing the boy to grimace. The brown-haired Sarutobi jumped on his feet and looked left and right. An ambush then? Ah! He exclaimed, pointing a finger at Naruto. You tripped me. Naruto exhaled powerfully from his nose and gave the small child a dead look. Nara incorporated na, he drawled. You're so clumsy you fell cause of your scarf. Don't lie to me. You're one of Gigi's ninja, you defend him, you definitely tripped me. Naruto turned to look at the Hokage. Was there anything like that in the contract? Hiruzen couldn't help the little smile that tugged on his lips and nodded. Yes, I remember putting that in. So you admit to it? Naruto looked back to the child. No. Faster than the eye could blink, however, the blonde teenager suddenly rasped on the boy's skull and swept at his legs gently, causing him to fall again. Here. Now I did it, he said with a grin. How dare you put your hands on the honorable grandson? The ninja at the door barked, his frown and his sneer a clear indication of what exactly he thought of Naruto, even behind his dark sunglasses. The blonde sighed and waved at the ninja while looking at the Hokage dead in the eyes. See? Totally no bias against me and your shinobi forces. Absolutely none. The old man sighed and massaged his brow. What would you have me do? Hypnotize them? The blonde scoffed. Oh, I don't know, teach them, explain, lead them? I thought your surname was the professor, so be the professor or something. Naruto deadpanned before he glanced back at the brown-haired child that was giving him a strange look. As for you. Naruto rasped his knuckles against the child's head once again, eliciting a squeal of displeasure from him. That's for accusing people wrongly. Don't be like this village thinking you don't get what you deserve for doing that. Turning on his heels, the blonde teenager showed his tongue to the ninja who was still at the door, frozen in shock or disgust, and exited the Hokage's office. A few minutes later, Naruto was walking the streets of Konoha, a canned drink bought in a little store in hand, and whistling an atrociously out-of-key song just to be annoying. He could whistle perfectly fine. Passers-by would throw him annoyed look at his overly enthusiastic, loud, and grating whistling, and Naruto would answer each of them with a wave. Suddenly, the blonde teenager sighed and stopped. You know, your stealth is absolutely terrible. Come out if you want something. Aha! As expected of you. You're as good as people say you are. Kid, no one says that I'm good. Naruto corrected. My grandpa does. Naruto felt his eyebrows rise in spite of him. Does he now? Because it isn't thanks to him. What do you want? I want you to teach me. A lull of silence stretched between the two boys before Naruto shrugged and turned heels. Not in the contract, sorry kid. What? Wait. Please. The little boy pleaded, latching on Naruto's leg. My tutor doesn't teach me anything. I need to become strong to defeat my grandfather, but Four Eyes doesn't teach me any jutsu. And what? Well, what do you expect from me? Well, you're awesome, so you can definitely teach me the stuff. Your tutor, was he the one in the office? Yeah, lame huh? So you have a tutor. He is an active ninja given he had a headband. His lack of proper uniform indicates that he is at least Tokubetsu Jonin considering his age. And you want me, a genin, to teach you? Naruto asked carefully. Yeah. The boy nodded with enthusiasm. It made perfect sense, right? Naruto refrained from face-palming, sighed and crouched in front of the boy. What's your name, boy? The little Sarutobi's eyes widened. Konohamaru, he muttered. All right, Konohamaru. How much time has your tutor been teaching you? 3 months. I'm beginning the academy this year. Naruto I smiled. I see. You know, when I was your age, I wanted to become super strong super fast too. I thought there were shortcuts to strength. Then I met someone who set my views straight. I met someone who made me work and work and work until I was exhausted, and beyond that even, every single day. The blonde tapped Konohamaru's cheek. I have nothing to teach you that the academy and your tutor won't. I can tell you one thing if you want to hear it. The brown-haired Sarutobi nodded eagerly. There is no shortcut to strength. You have to work your ass off. And you certainly won't beat your grandfather by tomorrow. Team 7 will be Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura. Your sensei will be Kakashi Hatake, announced Iruka before listing 10, 8, and 10 and dismissing the class for lunch. Sakura's scream of true love triumphs hid the sounds made by a powerful eye roll and a disgruntled sigh. Naruto looked at Sasuke, whom he was sitting next to. The blonde hummed in thoughts before he nudged the Uchiha's shoulder. Sasuke sent him a glare which Naruto ignored. Would you like to eat together as teammates? Sasuke's glare hardened before he simply turned away, refusing to dignify Naruto with even a huff. The blonde felt a vain pulse on his forehead and plastered on his face a grin that was all sharp and gleaming teeth before his hand gripped the back of Sasuke's head. The Uchiha startled at the contact and struggled silently as, with a grip of iron, Naruto forced him to look at him. I asked you, said Naruto frostily, would you like to eat together as teammates? The blonde had his blue eyes narrowed and somehow, they seemed to hold the cold of a merciless blizzard. Sasuke fought for a few seconds against the blonde's grip and, seeing that it was futile, huffed. No, thank you, he spat out behind grinding teeth. Oh? Why is that? Naruto asked, his eyes reduced to two slits, uncomfortably predatory, his canines shining ominously. I didn't bring lunch. The Uchiha answered tonelessly. Now, Sasuke-kun, it's not good to lie. I can smell the tomatoes from here. Why wouldn't we share our lunch like the wonderful team we're going to be? I don't need a team. Sasuke hissed in a hushed but no less harsh voice, trashing in vain against Naruto's hold on him. You don't get to decide that, spat Naruto in return, his voice just as dangerously low. Now be a good boy and come eat with your teammates. Unhand me, tried the Uchiha, his eyes projecting fire and lightning. Not unless you share your meal with me, Naruto answered in a tone that begged no contradiction. The Uchiha tried and wrestled with Naruto's immovable arm and hand for another few seconds before he stilled, his face red with effort. Why the hell are you so strong? He snarled. That's my business, but I might be tempted to explain it to my teammates, Naruto answered with a cold smile that did not reach his eyes. So, interested in a meal with me? Naruto could hear Sasuke swallow, and after a few seconds, the Uchiha nodded lightly. The blonde smiled a genuine smile. Good. We might have avoided trouble already. NHN? Nothing, let's just go eat, Naruto said as he rose from his seat and turned, looking for Sakura. The entire class was looking at him in silence, like he had grown not only a second but also a third head. Iruka was conspicuously looking at a stack of paper in his hands. What are you looking at? Don't you have fishes to fry or something? Naruto barked before he gestured to Sakura. Let's go, Sakura, lunchtime, am I right? The pink-haired girl nodded in silence, apparently torn between screaming at Naruto for strong-arming Sasuke into doing something and just going with the flow because she had dreamed of a lunch with Sasuke for years now. She hadn't envisioned Naruto to be here, but still, that was better than nothing. Under the attentive stares of their classmates, the trio exited the classroom, Naruto with a firm hand on Sasuke's shoulder to avoid any flight attempt from the Uchiha. 2 minutes later, Team 7 reached the open roof of the academy. Silently, Naruto gestured for Sasuke to sit down on one of the benches that lined up the edge of the roof. Sakura motioned to seat close to the dark-haired boy, but Naruto stopped her cold when his hand fell on her shoulder. Naruto bak. Whatever Sakura was going to say was lost when she saw the arctic look Naruto was giving her. She swallowed thickly and allowed the blonde boy to seat her gently at the edge of the bench, a good meter separating her from the object of her affection. Naruto gave her a satisfied nod and a smile that gleamed with too much teeth to be anything else than a warning. If you move, I'll eat your face off. The blonde silently communicated with his grin and an ice-cold eye smile. With Sakura cowed, Naruto cleared his throat and looked at his two unwilling companions with intensity. Alright, I know you don't want to be here for various reasons, Sasuke hates every second of it, but I don't really give a shit. We're a team now, and if we want to stay one, we're going to be friends. We're going to love it, and it's going to be awesome. Understood? Both Sasuke and Sakura gave him looks that clearly meant that no, it wasn't understood. Naruto sighed. Look, I don't want to be here either, even less than the both of you. By circumstances and necessity, we're Team 7. Now we have two solutions as I see it. We can become a team and learn from each other, and that'll certainly help us not only stay alive but also achieve our goals. Or we can pout like immature children and die at the first mishap that falls on us. Sasuke growled and uselessly attempted to kill Naruto with his eyes only. I don't need a team, dope. You both are weak and you'll be useless burdens. He spat angrily. Naruto returned the glare. And what do you need then, team? And I'm weak? You didn't pass the taijutsu exam in 2 seconds. The Uchiha huffed. PFF, luck and nothing else. Dumbass. Wanna test it, asshole? The blonde hissed threateningly. You're not worth the effort. You're scared, loser? That seemed to push the wrong button as Sasuke turned a death stare of an intensity not yet reached towards Naruto. The black-haired boy snarled like a savage animal. You have no idea what being scared means. He growled. And you're going to teach me? Naruto snorted disdainfully. Sasuke slowly shook his head and rose from his seat before he came face to face with Naruto. No, whispered the Uchiha in the blonde's ear. You don't have any family to lose. Do you, orphan? Nah, never had this chance, answered Naruto casually. I wonder how it is to have memories to cherish. When they have all been slaughtered, said Sasuke evenly, it's a constant reminder of how miserable you are and how weak you were. The blonde Uzumaki stayed silent at that. Believing it to be his victory, Sasuke attempted to sidestep Naruto, but the boy suddenly pushed firmly against the bench. The push, gentle but powerful, forced the Uchiha to stumble back and sit down again. So what do you need, Sasuke Uchiha? A new family to heal your misery or strength to never be weak again? Sasuke threw him a murderous glare and growled once again. Don't speak like you have any idea what. Oh, don't pull that card on me, you arrogant bastard. Your family died and I can't understand your pain? Well, I never had any family, and the villagers despise me. Naruto snarled. Are you gonna be the asshole and pretend your pain is greater than mine? Are you gonna be that guy, huh? Sasuke recoiled. You're on a team now, Sasuke. Are you gonna make the most of it? No, Mr. Uchiha is too good for that. Mr. Uchiha is gonna mop in the corner, and wallow in his suffering. Mr. Uchiha will pretend he can't see the hands around him and ignore what he can have. I thought your clan had good eyes, but were they all blind as bats like you? It's no wonder. Don't you fucking dare finish. They all fucking died. Arg. Sasuke jumped at Naruto with the enraged scream of a madman, his eyes blazing with fury, his cry of anger drowning the squeak of fright from Sakura. Naruto pivoted and flexed his knee before he grappled one of the Uchiha's arms that was just above his head, grasping at nothing. With a roll of his shoulder and a shift of his waist, the blonde threw the dark-haired boy across the roof. Sasuke had his breath robbed from him as he impacted the concrete on his side with too much force. You fucking no-name orphan. I'm going to murder you. Sasuke bellowed from his crouched position as soon as air entered his lungs again. I'm going to burn you to a crisp. PFFF, that's if you can aim. Naruto dismissed the threat mockingly. Sasuke was already running through hand signs. Ah, penis, muttered the blonde before he leapt at Sakura and jumped away from the bench with the girl on his shoulders, a torrent of flames devouring the poor wooden construct and scorching the concrete away. Where are you, you fucking bastard? Right here, announced Naruto with a chop to Sasuke's neck, causing the Uchiha to fall in a heap of sprawled limbs, unconscious. The blonde boy sighed and looked at Sakura, whom he still had on his shoulder. And Naruto-san? Yes? See, could you let me down? The girl squeaked, not daring to be too disrespectful right now, considering the blonde had just downed the supposedly first of their class Uchiha in one blow. She was also pretty dizzy because Naruto had moved at a speed she couldn't even fathom. And also, he had just saved her from an indiscriminate fireball that would have cooked her alive if he had not intervened, so being polite was the least she could do. Oh, you don't like it up here? Naruto could hear the blush that spread on Sakura's cheeks even as he couldn't see it. And no, I mean yes, but it's okay now. The blonde shrugged and allowed the girl down. She took several steps back, her face an impossible mix of so many emotions, Naruto couldn't tell what she was feeling. He sighed. I went too far. Why you did, Sakura said in a disapproving tone, apparently happy to have something to comment about. He wasn't very charming either. Sakura stayed silent, her crush on the Uchiha momentarily out of commission after her close brush with death caused by said Uchiha. I'll apologize when he wakes up. That would be good, I think, approved the pink-haired girl. He is still an ass. Sakura swallowed but didn't comment on that. But I was a bastard, so that balances out. When Kakashi finally arrived, his team wasn't in the classroom but already on the roof, where he had intended to make them race just for the heck of it. However, the trio of genins was far from doing anything he had imagined they would be doing. Naruto and Sakura were eating on a bench. While his little brother Kakashi was so proud to have won the Janken competition seemed relaxed, the girl was pale as a ghost and a bundle of nerve. The strangest sight, however, was the tied-up Uchiha who was glaring a glare that promised pain and slow agonizing death to Naruto. Kakashi didn't even try to piece together why a part of the roof was scorched beyond salvation. He set himself in his patented slouch, relaxed his shoulders and drawled. My first impression of you is that you're weird. Naruto gave him an exasperated eye roll and Kakashi silently clicked his tongue. He'd teach his little brother to disregard him and his coolness like that. Normally, I tell you to get to the rooftop, but you already cut to that part, so let's have a little introduction, shall we? You know, likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams, that kind of things. Sakura timidly raised her hand, but Naruto interrupted her by speaking. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I like my adoptive brother, history and ramen. I dislike being forced to do things against my will. My hobbies include learning new stuff and training, I guess. My dream is to understand why it's called instant ramen when it's clearly not instant. Kakashi suppressed a snort and blinked to dissipate the ghost of Obito that had superposed itself with Naruto, and motioned for Sakura to speak. I'm Sakura Haruno. I like there is a person I like. As for my hobbies, she glanced at the tied form of Sasuke and a strange blush heated her face, half self-disgust, half Kakashi didn't want to go there. My dream is a trickle of blood rolled down Sakura's nose as the girl's eyes lost themselves in unspeakable contemplations. With a start and a nudge from Naruto the girl came back to the present. I dislike Enopig. Kakashi hummed. Fascinating, fascinating. Had Rin been that shallow? No way, right? His sight shifted to the Uchiha, who was still issuing death threats by glare alone. What about you, Blackie? Sasuke snarled but said nothing. Kakashi felt the onset of a skull-splitting headache knock at the limit of his consciousness. Okay, I'll stay polite and pretend you didn't try to ignore a demand from your superior officer. What happened here? Naruto sighed. I was a bastard, he was an asshole, we fought. The blonde snickered mirthlessly. He lost. Unbind me, I'll show you losing, the Uchiha hissed. Nah, thanks. Why don't you answer Hataki-sensei? I don't like anything, I despise this team and I have better things to do than explaining my hobbies. I have a man to kill, he snarled. Kakashi massaged his temples to alleviate the pain that was pulsing through his head. The Uchiha was charming, much like himself had been, he supposed. Alright team, said the white-haired Jonin. Tomorrow will be our first exercise together. He announced with as much enthusiasm as he was capable. Exercise sensei? What kind? Sakura asked. Survival training. We did that already, remarked the girl. In the academy? I know, answered Kakashi with an eye smile. You see, you aren't genin yet, so this is your last exam to see if you're worth teaching or not. What? Sakura exclaimed in panic, while Sasuke growled in anger. Kakashi ignored them. Naruto had a gleam in his eyes that he didn't like. That's when he remembered. His little brother did not want to be a ninja. He had all the reasons to sabotage his own true exam. The Hokage would not accept it if Kakashi were to fail Team 7, not after he had gotten the Uzumaki to become a shinobi. Naruto had agreed to it, but if he were to somehow be officially failed, no one could hold it against him. Plus, the squad itself was too precious, its composition was way too much firepower to be squandered. You know what, hurriedly said the Jonin, I see potential in you, so I think there's no need for you to pass the exam. Kakashi conscientiously ignored Naruto as the blonde's eyes slowly started to glare murder at him as the blonde realized what his adoptive brother was doing. So here we are, the Jonin said with as much enthusiasm he could muster. Team 7 is activated. He finished with an eye smile. What? TCH. I'm going to burn down your porn stash. Neither Sakura or Sasuke had any time to wonder what Naruto had said as both their sensei and teammate disappeared in powerful bursts of speed. A note fluttered in the rushing wind and Sakura snatched it. It says to meet at 8 tomorrow at Training Ground 3. The pink-haired girl read. NHN, answered Sasuke. Sakura swallowed thickly. Should I untie you, Sasuke-kun? NHN. Oh, okay. Team 7 met the following day in Training Ground 3. All younger members of the cell were there at 8 o'clock sharp. Sasuke immediately proceeded to glare dreadfully at Naruto before he started a warming-up routine. Naruto himself sighed and shook his head and decided to warm up too, sending a meaningful glance at Sakura, who hurriedly did her own stretches. 30 minutes later, the Genins were perfectly warmed up, their body ready to perform to their maximum. Save for Sakura, who was panting already, her feeble constitution catching up to her. Naruto eyed her, seemed to consider something, and walked to her. Can I be blunt? What? Too late. Sakura, you really need to start eating properly and build up your endurance and muscles. I already said you were made of marshmallow, but this is ridiculous. You're a ninja now and you'll be met with situations where you'll have only yourself to rely on. Sakura gasped like a fish out of the water, her eyes bulging out of her sockets. Sasuke-kun will save me. Her disconnected brain eventually made her say in outrage. Naruto gave her the universal look that precisely said, did you just say that and are you actually retarded or did I hear you wrong? Before he sighed a second later. Part of you is actually serious. Kami above. Do you believe the same guy who nearly roasted you yesterday will jump to your rescue? Well, Sakura, I'm happy to have known you. What are your favorite flowers? Momentarily too downstruck by what the blonde teenager had just told her, the pink-haired girl mumbled an answer without even thinking. Lilac. Cool, I'll deposit that on your grave once you're dead. Sakura paled and looked up at Naruto. The blonde's blue eyes were cold as ice and his posture betrayed nothing while his features seemed carved into granite. The girl felt a queasy feeling creep up her stomach and beads of sweat purled along her spine. Dead? She croaked. Yup, said Naruto with an enthusiasm that sounded like a saw and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Dead. Kaput. Buried. If you don't move your bony little ass into gear, you'll fall at the first complication. That's fact. Sakura turned green and took a step back. Unperturbed, Naruto bulldozed on through the girl's conception of life and self-esteem. Now, you can decide it's okay with you and in that case, I'll leave you to it, and when you end up 6 feet under, I'll buy a plaque that says I fucking told her so, and I swear to Kami I'll have it screwed to your tomb. The pink-haired girl fell on her behind, but Naruto could not say if it was from fear or shock. Naruto suddenly extended his hand and looked at the girl dead in the eye. With a curiously deep and grating voice, the blonde spoke. Come with me if you want to live. Sakura, apparently too frightened to answer anything, considered the hand for 3 long seconds, glanced towards Sasuke, who was regally ignoring the 2 other members of his team, looked back at the extended hand and finally took it, hesitantly. As the girl's finger brushed the boy's, the blonde looked down at her with a warning in his eyes. There is no quitting if you take this hand. Sakura swallowed deeply, looked again at Sasuke, frowned with a shake of her head, and looked at Naruto again. With a resolute nod, she took the hand. Naruto yanked her up abruptly. Kakashi will be late a few hours, so we'll put that time to good use. Why? He is mourning, don't ask questions. Now Naruto threw the pink-haired girl a glare that wouldn't have been out of place on a drill sergeant's face, and, a kunai suddenly appearing in his hand, started barking like a mad dog. Time to scare the civvy out of you, you pathetic sack of bubblegum. Now get your ass into gear and run. Come on, run if you don't want me to give you a new haircut. The blonde boy hot on her heels, Sakura fled with all the might she was capable of. The pink-haired torture was only beginning. After 50 minutes of being chased around at her full speed by Naruto, the boy nicking her with his kunai each time she showed signs of slowing, the boy set her up to doing various muscles-building exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, and whatever ups there was that could be thought of. Half an hour later, Sakura was laying in a pool of her own sweat, each muscle on her too slender frame trembling of exhaustion. Shinobi have naturally enhanced muscles compared to non-chakra users. The reason for that is that when you exercise, chakra circulates everywhere and passively assists in rebuilding your body. Naruto explained to the panting and moaning girl in the tone of a teacher giving a class. Of course, you can actively flood your muscles with chakra for a great boost of power, but ultimately, it's multiplicative. If there is nothing to boost, you won't get a boost. Plus, it can be dangerous and downright inefficient when done incorrectly, and that's not even talking about the chakra bleed if used constantly. Hence why you need muscles in the first place. Sakura continued panting. The only indication she was even listening was the look in her eyes. Far from being glazed over by fatigue, they promised revenge against her torturer. Naruto chuckled. Good, feel the anger in you and channel it. If you want to break my skull, that'll be as good a motivator as any for you to train. The blonde shrugged, apparently not being overly concerned that Sakura would ever make good on her silent promise. Anyway, to build muscles, you'll need the element to do so in the first place. So no more dieting, understood bubblegum? Sakura gave a mix of a groan and a snarl and glared. I'm sure that'd be threatening if Naruto seemed to consider the form of Sakura on the ground and shook his head. Yeah, no, it's really not. I'll even have to teach you how to snarl apparently. Well, get up bubblegum, it ain't over yet. Is the nickname really mandatory? I'll get rid of it when you can put up with what I put you through, bubblegum. Fair enough? No. Too bad you don't get to decide, I suppose. When Kakashi arrived 3 hours later, he was met with something he wasn't expecting. Sakura was asleep against one of the 3 hitting posts, the orange vest of Naruto covering her. A single glance was enough for Kakashi to see the hair matted with sweat, the few bruises and the bizarre cuts here and there in the fat of her arms. Naruto was doing a handstand and pushing up and down on his arms. Kakashi was torn between the youthfulness of the position and the fact it was also his little brother definitely showing off. What happened here? The white-haired jonin with an eye smile. Sakura and I worked together on actualizing her physical levels, Naruto answered from his upside-down position. You ran her through one of your gauntlets? Kakashi asked, his perfectly calm and nonchalant voice masking the worry he was truly feeling. Nah, she wouldn't survive it yet, I know that much. She is really weak for a genin. Yeah, Kakashi agreed weakly. Where is Broody? You're one to talk. Naruto snorted. I think he is over at the river, trying to evaporate the water with fire jutsus. I take it you're all warmed up? Hilarious. What dash? TCH, I'll show you hilarious. Impossible, and I-san, you're way too broody for that. I'm not. R2. I'm getting better. You mourned your porn stash for the entire night until what time is it, 11? You bet you're broody. A little brother should be more respectful of his older brother's stuff, Kakashi protested. Well, if you'd let me fail the true genin exam, I wouldn't have had to porn your Ika collection, retorted Naruto. Kakashi sighed. It's not my fault, Naruto. You know I couldn't do that. The boy shrugged, which, in his handstand position, was the equivalent of another push-up, and shook his head. It's never anyone's fault. So what?